Welcome back, everybody. We've made it to the grand finals where we have Team Gorilla facing off against Team Rocket. I have Stumpy with me still. What are we expecting from these finals, Stumpy?
We're expecting some very fun games. We've got 5 really exciting sets. Whether we get to see the 5 is up to our two teams, but some nice ones to watch and some really fun ones.
Yeah, definitely feels like Team Gorilla has done their homework in the last couple of games. Team Rocket had the pleasure to mainly pick killers that Rocket seemed super comfortable on. But now, no Demo, no Doc, and no Henry the First have made it through the picks and ban phase. But instead, we're gonna see Blight and Trickster. And if you are familiar with Obi, you know that he loves those picks. So I would definitely say that Team Gorilla has a very favorable draft for themselves. The other picks are Unknown on Wrecker's Yard and Dark Lord on Family Residence. So the tiebreaker is going to be the Lich again. It's very surprising that Team Rocket picked Trickster because I know that Obi plays quite a bit of Trickster, plays Trickster for Team Elysium. Also posted a very jolly gif of the Trickster when the pick was announced by the teams. But yeah, we've seen Obi on Dark Lord just earlier getting a very chill 4K5, which, yeah, maybe that would have been a good ban as well. I'm just super happy to see Blight, one of my favorite sets in all of Comp DVD. Suffocation Pit. It's just a classic.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think as well, it's a nice sort of goodbye to current Trickster as well, getting to see him. So it'll be really nice to just see him one last time before he gets these changes. Do you think the changes will affect comp much?
Absolutely, because pre-running is going to be so powerful against him that his lethality is probably going to suffer quite a bit in a competitive setting. Just nerfing his movement speed down to 4.4. I think one of the big parts that made him more viable in comp and more accessible to a wider audience of players was that they changed his movement speed up to 115 from 110. And by reverting that change, I can see him being a little bit worse off for the average player. I think it's a change that the old school Trickster mains are going to love. But if you are a 4.4 killer and you don't. No, wait. Am I getting the numbers wrong? If you're a 110 killer and the team calls out your every move and you can pre-run everything, you're just gonna have such a hard time to get your first down and just to pressure anything on the map. So it's gonna be very similar to Hunters, lots of camping once you get that first hook. So I'm not too sure how it's gonna be. Of course, the laceration stacks are being reduced that are needed to get an entry. We will see in the future, but for now, we are loading in onto the Wrecker's Yard. Rocket killing on the Unknown, and we're seeing no Corrupted Dimension, and instead a very totem-heavy build being supported by Pain Resonance, just bringing a lot of brute force into this matchup. And we're seeing the stopwatch again, allowing to disable the exhaustion perks of the survivor. Spitz is going to be our first chase in this mid-map area, and Rocket is able to hit the first weakened shot with the UVX.
Yeah, they'll be feeling very good going into this Team Gorilla, having just played an unknown set. They know exactly what they have to do. Yes, slightly different map, but they know what's expected of them here.
This is going to be the first injury onto Spitz. Rocket being a bit patient there, thinking, okay, can I get a UVX shot here and maybe get a quick 2-tap onto Spitz? It's not possible. Spitz on the check spots, not getting mind-gamed on Shack. Able to drop the Shack pallet, take a lot of distance. Rocket just forced to break it. One neat thing about Spitz being first chase for Team Rocket is that Spitz is the counterforce survivor. So maybe the one person would really want to be on the totems in such a Hex favored build. Just Rocket electing to zone break, and Spitz dodging another UVX, unfortunately forced to die in the corner. Great death spot, first gen pops for Team Gorilla.
Yeah, Spitz seems to have a knack for being found first. Seems to love the adrenaline attack in that first chase, and I think just seeks it out.
Yeah. We already see that Undying has left the trial, so our survivors are electing to cleanse the hexes. Dan hoping for maybe a cheeky head-on save, but also just being in the position to get the Anuk already.
Definitely something to watch out for later, because that could have been very interesting had Rocket walked through there instead of round the loop.
Yeah, for sure. We see the Pentimento coming through as Rocket is looking for the tunnel out onto Spitz, who just pre-drops this a very safe crane filler, and Rocket decides to go for Fresh X instead, finds Ana. And one of the reasons to go for this chase could be that the Pentimento is right here. So if you're able to get it down on your Pentimento totem, that is super campable for the killer. Ana not able to juke the UVX, taking chase to this pre-dropped crane filler. It's been picked up again by any means. And she is able to get rid of the weakened status effect. Well played. Good check spots. Oh! Runs into the wall a tiny bit there, unfortunately. Maybe it's an elaborate head-on play? No, it is not. Ana goes down, gets hooked in another pain res. Pentimento leaves the trial, but Rocket still has that Hex Ruin available.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely be happy to get rid of that Pentimento. It was a really good chase as far as that's concerned. It can always be a big hindrance for your generators.
Yeah, and the gen pressure that's coming through from our survivors is really high. We see 3 generators at roughly 60% or more. So Rocket really not in a position where he can afford to camp. He needs to find new entries, new downs. And he does find the injured Spitz, who's not able to juke the UVX shot this time. Rocket breaks the pallet, and maybe this would be a smart chase to leave. Just keep Spitz weakened, because it's gonna be very unlikely that a down comes through here. It's just such a high risk going for that UVX shot. And Spitz does not get caught off guard as Dan gets found going for the pull onto Ana. Oh,
Yeah, these
barely
pressures are
avoiding the
definitely good
entry.
to look for.
But yeah, great timing by Rocket to interrupt the unhook attempt by Dan. As we see Spitz and Pedrito, who has joined the Survivor roster, resetting in the distance. This is going to be stage 2 secured for Rocket onto Ana. So not looking too bad for Unknown.
Yeah, it's a really good start, and definitely camping that to second stage was a good idea. But the fresh hooks will probably play a big part here. I don't imagine there'll be a 4K coming through, so getting
This
as many
pallet
fresh hooks as you can will be massive.
is so incredibly unsafe, and Pedrito not there to take the body block. Spitz goes down to the UVX shot, and Rocket has another injured, weakened survivor in chase right in front of him. Pedro does
Ooh.
get rid of the weakened just in time, but Rocket is looking for even more pressure here, trying to find the reset onto Ana potentially, who is his tunnel out. But Ana doing a great job at stealthing while Spitz is being left on the ground. Ruin working away at the generators. This is a lot of pressure onto the Gorilla survivors.
Yeah, and he will definitely want Ana dead. A 3v1 could be massive now, especially with how quick Rocket knows they can do the generators, and when they get on them, he does not want 4 survivors in this trial for much longer.
Wow, this is such a great recovery by Team Gorilla. It was looking really spicy for just a moment there, with one person on the ground and another person weakened and injured. But is Spitz going to go down here again? Yes, he is. Great patience by Rocket on the UVX. Secures another down next to a high progress generator. Luckily, Team Gorilla was able to pop this hill gen. Now only that one in the top right corner has a lot of progress. Never mind, Dan has another one at the top side of the map. Working away at that generator. Does not get weakened on this edge map filler. And all of a sudden, all the pressure that Rocket was able to build up has just been denied
Ooh.
completely. No injury coming through. UVX does connect onto Dan. Well played by Rocket. If this is a 2-tap, this might be one way for Rocket to come back into the game. But both Pedro and Anna were able to reset. Dan is on the Ruin Totem with Spitz still on the still on the hook. Gets weakened in the distance. Great shot by Rocket. And Pedro will have to trade here. Can he get it without getting body blocked? And are Team Gorilla willing to give another fresh hook to Rocket? Yes, they are. Pedro trying to make his way past Rocket. Great body block coming through, but he does get it just in time to save Spitz from being eliminated. Spitz also takes the body block for Pedro. Pedro with the balanced landing, and both are able to make it away from the killer.
Yeah, it was almost a perfect body block from Rocket there. He seemed to just be holding the survivor off, but they got the save in the end, just in the nick of time.
Ooh, Spitz does wrap back into Rocket, maybe expecting a premature teleport there, but this is going to be it for Spitz. As we see Dan having a generator at roughly 90%. Ana and Pedro stacking another one. Dan gets interrupted, still weakened for like a couple more seconds. Does not get down though.
We've seen some good dodges from Team Gorilla today, not only in this set, but the one in the semi-final too. They seem to be really good at just getting out of the way in time.
But we've also seen some really great shots by Rocket. Really impressive with how many UVX shots he was able to damage the survivors with. And now we have the Pentimento nested in between two active generators, making it really hard for the survivors to cleanse this totem. And as long as the Pentimento is up, that's going to be a 25% gen repair penalty. Same goes for healing speed as well. So they really want to remove this totem from the trial. And Rocket is gonna try his best to defend it. But yeah, this is a lot of trouble for Team Gorilla. Still 2 generators left to finish.
Yeah, I think if you gave Rocket the option of picking where he wanted to put that Pentimento totem, that's where he would have picked. It's in a great spot between those two gens.
These shots are so good.
Yeah, he's really hitting some serious shots today.
Dan is the last on this edge map filler. He needs to win some really big 50s for his team here. Pedro on the ground being picked up by Ana right now. And Dan cannot last, gets hit over the pallet. Well played by Rocket, but he does have a teleport here. And you see the healing speed reduction coming in clutch, making the pickup so much slower. And now we have 2 people stuck in the crane. Do you know how to operate the system, Lara Croft? Otherwise, you might be in a bit of trouble here. This is going to be a 4K2 for Team Rocket.
I think I should probably take back what I said about maybe there'll not be a 4K in this game. He has turned that right on its head. Rocket, out of nowhere, has just ended this game. 3 gens got popped, and he says, right, no more. This is the end of them.
Absolutely incredible performance. A 4K2 against Team Gorilla on the unknown. Okay, I can definitely see why Team Rocket picked this set. That is such a strong result against the killer that many consider the harmless. Now Rocket may be waiting for Dan to DC, but in Tenax we do like to play it out. He does TP to his hallucination, picks up Dan in the distance, and secures 4K2 for his team.
Yeah, definitely not harmless is Rocket. He's showed just how harmful this killer can be and done really well. It's a tough ask of Obi, but we'll see if he's up to it.
And we see it in the background there, the purple aura being revealed. This Pentimento totem did so much for Rocket. It slowed down the generators just enough to prevent a 4K1. It slowed down the pickup speed onto Pedro just enough to make it a 4K2. Really the MVP of this trial.
And they would have been so happy as well getting rid of that ruin finally, only to find, oh no, that totem's in the perfect spot.
Yeah, and you saw the survivors just struggling to make the right call there because of the healing penalty that Pentimento causes. Unable to get the reset, unable to pop the generator in time. And with Spitz getting eliminated on that filler, it was just a pretty tough situation going into the 3v1. And all of these UVX shots, they added up because Rocket just kept hitting them.
Yeah, big time, and that's something Obi will want to follow up. We've already seen him do very well on Unknown today, so if there's anyone that can do it, it would be Obi. So definitely
And
not gone just yet.
you were talking earlier about how Team Gorilla would be able to sub out one player to just put in another world-class player. And we see here Kexo subbed out, and instead you get Pedro. So that's a pretty good replacement, I would say. Definitely top tier players all the way. What an exciting way to start off this grand finals.
Yeah, 4K2. Now, all our survivors will want to do is get those 4 generators done as quickly as possible, get the 1-0, and head into the next set.
Yeah, and an average result for Unknown would be roughly 6 stages. So a 4K is a tall ask on the best day. A 4K3 for win condition is pretty much unheard of. Not in
Yeah,
the current state that Unknown is in.
I think we can definitely see why Team Rocket picked this killer. Really showing their stuff very well, or Rocket was showing his stuff very well.
Damn, it was really impressive how patient Rocket was with the UVX shots every single time. And there was one trick that the survivors did when Pedro went to unhook Spitz. There is a thing you can do where you time, you start unhooking the survivor and you cancel it as the killer swings for you. And then you immediately start it again. And if you do it perfectly and if you're on low ping, it allows the other survivor to take a body block for you. And that's exactly what we saw. So that was really well executed. But unfortunately, Rocket just unrelenting under pressure.
Yeah, it's those little margins that you're gonna see in a game with as good a players as this. This is really what it's gonna come down to. These just little moments like that could spell the end for a team.
And we are seeing the same survivor roster that Team Rocket has fielded when they won the Tenax number 10. We changed the rules. Now, if you win an event, you have to sit out for the next one, and then you can sign up again. So Team Rocket won event number 10. We're sitting out for event number 11, and are now here in 10x number 12 to, yeah, maybe steal the show from Team Gorilla.
Yeah, it would definitely be a shock to Gorilla's system losing the first set, but it could happen because whenever a team picks a killer, usually their survivors are all geared up and ready to go as well and know how to counter the killer just as well. So we're expecting big things from the survivor team now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's a shock to lose a set, but it's a shock to lose a 4K2. That is just such an unexpected result for Unknown. So Obi has to bring his A game, and maybe that cool Balatro cosmetic, please. I really want to see it. I'm sorry. It's so good. And he's already rocking the Jester headpiece, so that's so similar. I think it would be a great fit. We're loading into the trial. And Obi is bringing the exact same build, except for one small difference. Instead of bringing the footprint, which gives you a faster hallucination spawn based on weakened survivors, he's bringing the cartridge, which allows you to perform a kicking or breaking action a little bit faster after teleporting. We see Lexi getting weakened, but Obi is not too concerned about this chase, playing a bit of hit and run Unknown for now, making sure his totems are safe and maybe getting the hallucination in the perfect spot right where he wants it to be.
They're already on the totems as well, trying to get rid of them as quick as possible. There goes the first.
Yeah, first one's always free with Undying, that totem leaving the trial. Doesn't mean too much. It basically just enables Pentimento, but now we know that Ruin will be cleansed next, as we are committing to this chase onto Tavo. We have Jester Unknown versus Jester Vittorio, the matchup of the century. Or not, because Obi decides to leave the chase and look for a juicier target, but he doesn't find anybody working this generator. Now sees Rocket, who's rocking a very fashionable Jeff outfit. I'm a big fan. Is this the chase that Obi is going to go for? Because if you have a 4k3 win con, you have to commit at some point. Does not connect the UVX, and Rocket has a very safe tile to play here. He's holding the distance properly, pre-dropping this pallet. I thought it was a different pallet, that's why I said it was very safe. This one is more of a 50, but once it's pre-dropped and you have a bit of distance, that's where it becomes really powerful. Obi knows. Obi drops the chase, and yeah, tries to cut Rocket off. Not much going on yet. There hasn't been an injury just yet, so are we playing for the famous sinister win condition here? Okay, Rocket does no longer have a pallet here. Gonna need some rocket pathing to get out of this one, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Rocket is leaving the loop very early. Still no injury for Obi. That's wild to me.
Yeah,
Two
some
jets
really
have
clean
popped.
looping from Rocket here. It's interesting that this is the one that Obi wants to commit to, because we all know how good Rocket can be.
For sure, Rocket, one of the most experienced 1v1 players, probably has been spamming Unknown on ladder quite a bit. And again, Lexi avoiding the injury, getting away with just a weekend as Tavo pops another generator for the tie condition, and Obi has not gotten anything done yet. I hate to say it as bluntly as that. And again, Rocket just leaves the tile. No injury.
Yeah, the Survivor's doing a really good job right now. That chase from Rocket has set them up so nicely to get this win condition, get to 1-0, and then just start thinking about the next game. But Obi will want to commit to somebody, get a few hooks on the board, get a bit of confidence for himself ahead of the rest of this match.
Finally gets the first tag onto Mash, but Mash takes a good hit, makes it too shy. And I think what Obi has been doing here, he's been trying to find Chase in a very particular part of the map, close to his Pentimento, or to his Cleansed Undying, so that he could set up a very strong Pentimento hook. But you gotta get the injuries, you gotta get the downs, otherwise you won't have a hook to play for at all.
That was really nice body blocking from Rocket there, letting Mash get a bit of distance.
Yeah, Mash just makes it to the edge map. If he dies here, it's perfect for the team. They are working away at the last generator that they need for win condition. And Obi, he gets his first down at 4 generators completed. If this even is the down, because Rocket is here. And he cannot get the save with the beam, just barely.
Who planted that tree there?
Mr. Beast! Okay, so win condition has been achieved for Team Rocket. 1 hook stage on the board for Obi. Potentially can light up 2 Pentimento totems, but it's just all a little too late. The first chase just couldn't get capitalized on, no injuries, only a couple of weekends, and even those were shrugged off by the survivors quickly. Really strong showing from the Team Rocket survivor side.
Yeah, it's a really, really good performance, and they will take loads and loads of confidence from it. Rocket just seems to be doing everything right at the minute in chase as well, dodging the shots. Maybe not that one.
Finally loses a mind game there, greeting the pallet instead of dropping it as Obi walks right through it. But this is a good example as to why the Unknown is considered harmless, and yeah, it's not pretty when it goes wrong.
Even the blind as well.
Predicts the TP perfectly, holds great distance, does get weakened up again. But we see Lexi in the distance working away at the 5th generator. Rocket dodges another one. Can he make it back to a pallet? He can. Oh, Obi, yeah. Just swinging to try and get the pallet drop, but Rocket knows he's not falling for that one. Greets this filler even more, playing for the stun, doesn't quite get it. Wow. Team Rocket is here to play, and I love to see it.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance from them.
Oh, I'm experiencing a little issue with my stream. Do you have the
Yeah,
same thing
me
happening?
too.
Okay,
Yeah,
I have the in-game feed, so I can commentate
no
over it
worries.
if you're fine with that.
Yep.
We see Rocket still in chase on the very same filler as the last generator gets completed. And yeah. And we are back. Very sorry about the short intermission. Unfortunately, our producers Dead by Daylight crashed, and we did not quite know how to handle the situation. Team Rocket ended the game with 4 stages and 2 fresh hooks. Rocket finally lost the 50 on that car pallet and got sacrificed in the basement as his teammates escaped the trial. So Team Rocket is up 1-0 in the grand finals, taking their set. And yeah, definitely a statement game. Just 4K touring against the harmless, or like as the harmless, and then having such an incredible survival result as well. Really, really showing expertise on both sides of the coin or the matchup.
Yeah, Rocket will be in line for MVP so far anyway. Definitely 2 strong starts from him.
And it's always fun to see these 1v1 players, 1v1 gods play killer, because this quite reminds me of Team Elysium that had Pedro on Survivor with Zeno playing almost all of the killers. And Pedro decided, hey, I want to play killer. I believe in myself. I'm really good. And now look at where he's at. He's their main killer player for Team Invictus, arguably the best team in the world. And yeah, Rocket is obviously on Invictus, so we don't get to see a lot of his killer gameplay on there, except for some very specialized sets like Demo. But yeah, really fun to see him on other picks as well. He's doing a great job so far.
Yep, I believe I am going to hop out now and hand you over to the very capable hands of Pixel Bush. So I will be watching from the stream for the rest of it, but good luck with the rest of the stream.
Thank you so much, Stumpy. You did amazingly, and it is my pleasure to introduce to the cast Pixel Bush. I hope you're doing well today. It's good to see you.
Hello, and yes, I'm doing as well as can be expected, given that I am unfortunately late to the grand finals. I am very sorry about that. Um,
We're just
yes.
happy to have you here. We have Team Gorilla playing versus Team Rocket, and as you probably grasped, Team Rocket in dominant fashion have taken the 1-0 lead up against Team Gorilla. So it's going to be quite exciting. And yet again, we do have a tiebreaker lich set, which we've seen
Oh
the
yes,
last time that we
we are
cast together. So we're
we are
so
so
ready.
back. This is
Beautiful.
pretty wonderful. Yes, I am very sorry about my late arrival there. Dead by Daylight being the most functional it has ever been, as usual. My game deciding, you know what, instead of actually booting so you can spectate and be useful, why don't I just have an EAC issue and crash your PC?
Ah, the classic.
Yes, indeed. Just had to get back onto the had to get back onto live because obviously I've been on PTB for content production purposes. Um, and the game decided to reward me for my efforts by throwing a wobbly. But no worries, we are now back. So just had just had a unknown set. Unfortunately, I could not see much of it. But thoughts so far?
Thoughts so far, Team Rocket coming out swinging, upsetting Team Gorilla, who are probably the favorites to take this tournament for themselves, with a 4K2 to 4 stages, 2 fresh sweep. So absolute domination on both killer and survivor side. But we are headed into the next set, which is going to be Blight on Suffocation Pit. And if you're familiar with Comp DBD, if you're familiar with Obi, you know that he is widely regarded as one of the best Blights in Europe, in the world. And this is going to be an absolute pleasure to watch.
For
And
sure.
Team Gorilla has to lock in because, let's be honest, a 4K2 against Unknown and then getting 4 staged right after, that's gotta sting a tiny bit. So
Oh, absolutely. That's knocking you off balance might
yeah.
be the term there. And yeah, Blight's a hell of a killer. Very, very unforgiving for the survivors if the in the face of any mistakes or unfortunate map RNG. So this is going to be a very unforgiving round, but I guess that means that the stakes have never been higher.
Yes. This is my first time that I get to commentate OB's Blight, so I'm extra excited. We've seen our fair share
Wonderful.
of Blights in Tenax,
Oh yes,
and
yes.
we've seen always great proficiency on the killer. But I think where Obi's Blight sets himself apart from other Blights is also the game sense and decision making. We had a Dracula set earlier where Obi's game sense just carried him to a 4K5, just being able to find every single rotation mercilessly. So yeah, super excited what he can do on one of his signature killers. We see a very standard build coming through, Ruin paired with Eruption and Call of Brine. Unlike DBD ranked, we still have Ruin and Eruption allowed on Blight. I think that is perfectly fair, even though he's a very strong killer. In a setting with professional teams, I think it's a bit more viable to have the killer have strong pucks rather than a DBD ranked setting where some players might be a little less experienced. As Obi is chasing scratch marks on this bot side of the map. Cannot hit the conversion rush though.
Still okay. Just looks like Obi's immediately found a relatively early first chase, leading them into shack side. Unfortunately, this is in the corrupted gens, which on a lot of killers and a lot of map might be a problem. But if this is looking to be the three do not always try and defend anyway, this might be a bit more advantageous. Just ensuring a cluster of gens with no progress on them, ideally around that hook.
Yeah, this is going as well as possible for the survivors. Lexi able to get the reverse stun onto Obi, zoning himself, making a lot of distance with Champion of Light here as well. This is already a really long chase, even with Lexi going down just yet. Lexi has been nothing but impressive whenever we got the opportunity to cast him on Tenax. This is Team Rocket fielding the exact same roster that they won with just 2 tournaments ago. So yeah, maybe this is turning out to be more than just a puck team and a true competitor in Tenax. I love to see it.
Absolutely. We've got a narrative going along here. We love to see it.
Yes.
And you guys all know I love a good narrative.
They call you the lore guy for a reason. Obi has found
left, lore
Tavo now on the top side with the For the People Survivor. Rocket gets the pull onto Lexi, trying to get the reset as Tavo sends it bot side to get out of the active gens. On the snake tile using life to his advantage. And Obi does get a relatively quickly down. Now 3 survivors are stuck on this bot side of the map. They will have to rotate back to the top side. And Obi should be aware of that, trying to carry Tavo as close to his top side 3-gen as possible. And even though you mentioned that the chase was taking place in the corrupted area, not a single generator has been completed yet.
Yeah, there's multiple high progress gens, but no actual completions yet. And the ruin is right next to that gen. They don't seem to have noticed it yet. But it is right next to that very high progress gen where chase is occurring right now.
Yeah, and Mash is being zoned back into the top side of the map, trying desperately to take the chase to the bottom side, but he's stuck here with Obi, and that's not a blight. You want to be stuck with great insta rush onto Mash.
Absolutely.
Goes down in the 4-gen on the highest progress generator. This is spelling trouble for Team Rocket early.
On the high progress gen, but also has the ruin an inch away from it.
Yeah, Obi is really happy with this great hook placement. Just
Literally could
searching,
not have been a better moment for Obi. Literally couldn't have been better.
trying to find the rotating, unhooking survivor, and he's very close to Rocket, who is stealthing on this filler. Obi does not quite see him, rushes all the way to the bot side of the map. Now he's seeing a bit of an overcommit here.
Potentially, but I at least imagine we'll see the there's a shack pallet coming out. Yeah, Rocket's already on that ruin immediately. So obviously, looks like Obi's gen kick post about to come online in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, wow, great play by Lex. He gets the Champion of Light again. And if Obi cannot get this down quickly, he's gonna lose his gen setup on the top side.
Absolutely, it's been
So good. These micro movements against Blight are so impressive. But Obi is super patient, waits out all the rushes, and gets the down onto Lexi. And we do see another survivor stealthing on this gen. So even though Obi abandons his top side setup, he gets the down onto another active gen. So maybe this was calculated all along.
perhaps, and he does have a death hook. A death hook Lexi now to work with. Lexi's chasers have been very, very solid. So we will see if he's able to convert that into a down, given just kind of how much of a demon Lexi seems to have been tonight. But I can definitely see the intention here. Oh, there's the 4 people coming out from Taro.
Oh, but Obi is right back onto Lexi, immediately getting the injury. And I think he's definitely going to commit for the tunnel out here. Rocket is there to take a body block. The Deliverance survivor, very safe in the spot. Oh my goodness, not trusting the teammate, throwing the pilot onto Rocket. Rocket was what he needed to.
Rocket being McCain there, Lex going down under the pallet.
Pallet saves are really tough to get right now on this patch. And I don't think Mesh is going to get, Mesh just doesn't get the prompt.
Right.
And that is going to be the elimination onto Lexi at 4 generators remaining. Everybody on Team Rocket is injured.
Absolutely. This is a brutal momentum swing for Obi here. Implying he's never really been behind on momentum. He mostly hasn't been this game. But unfortunately, Lexi's just... Despite a valiant performance in Chase, at the end of the day, this is the Blight we're talking about. And this is Obi's Blight, specifically. It's a challenge to manage, shall we say. Tavo picking the most awkward death spot he'd possibly find. Now, this is just going to be a matter of scrabbling to get some gens done to try and make the upcoming killer round that little bit more manageable. Because if no more gens get completed, that's a Herculean task.
But you're seeing that all of the generators all over the map have just a tiny bit of progress, indicating that our survivors have been interrupted on every single one of them. They've probably completed 3 gens already, just when it comes to the amount of progress that they have put into the generators. But only one of them has popped so far. Oh, Rocket plays for the stun there. Even at the 4th rush, he still gets it. Well played. Rocket has to be very familiar with both Obi's Light as well as his ping, but he does go down after another clean insta-rush.
Chooses to actually take the hook this time. looks like. I actually imagine I'll have the time to. What with.
Yeah, he saw
That'll be
that
help.
Mesh got the reset off, so he knew that there would not going to be a lot of gen pressure on the map, so he decides, I can hook Rocket, even though he's the Deliverance survivor. I have the time, I have the luxury to do so, finds a quick down onto Tavo, who is also going to be on his second hook now. And I think Obi was actually playing a bit of a meta game there when he decided to not commit onto the tunnel out onto Nash on the top side of the map, and instead playing for his bottom gens that are in a way worse position. Because he definitely saw that Mash was the obsession, indicating a potential decisive strike being in play. And had Team Rocket gotten their survivor with decisive strike and dead hard as the tunnel out immediately, they would have been so well prepared for it. And now they've just been caught off guard all
Absolutely.
over this match. It's beautiful
Obi
to see
can
from Obi.
Obi can smell the perks.
He definitely is one of the most experienced killers that are playing in comp. He's playing on one of the best teams, and he's playing one of his best killers. So this has been an absolute treat to watch so far.
Oh, absolutely. And it is very telling that Obi is so confident that he has got this. It's just a question of how many gens he can, how many gens the survivors can squeeze through before the inevitable happens at this point.
This is exactly what I was talking about. Obi expecting a Mash to be the dead hard survivor, smelling a decisive strike as well. Waits out the dead hard beautifully, but is bumping one more time into the edge map and gets another down. 4 generators left to be done. Tavo has high progress on this top side map generator, but Obi just knows. Can he find the stealthing Vittorio?
This must be the 5th 99 gen that Obi has managed to interrupt so far.
Yeah, it's gotta be really infuriating for the survivors. Like, as soon as you think you can work one gen safely, a freaking mutated Scotsman shows up and ruins your day.
He's just crawling all over you.
And
No,
this is... Oh, Obi going for a very fast rush combination there. Unfortunately, unable to connect the lethal rush. This is
But
going to be...
Tavo zoned out anyway, so this is just going to be a valiant struggle at an edge map palette for Tavo. That's going to be the death hook, a second dead survivor. It looks like. Let's see if they are desperately somehow able to scrounge another gen through, just to give Team Gorilla's killer a fighting chance in the next round.
Well, to give Team Gorilla any challenge at all, because right now it's looking like a 4k4. Obi finds the gen that Rocket has been working on. Rocket has to commit this, even though there is no chance of him popping it. And Obi is gonna scan this area, trying to find the hiding Claudette. This is not bad for them though, because the 2 gens that are being worked on couldn't be further apart on the map. So the possibility of one of them still popping is still there.
It certainly has been a treat watching watching Obi handle this team, because due to Blight's, shall we say, generous levels of strength, this set's one of those sets that allows the survivors to get to use a bunch of perks that normally they wouldn't be able to use against almost any killer. Perks like Decisive Strike and Deliverance. And seeing how Obi has handled them, is that's a second gen completed.
Very good. Well played by Rocket there.
And
Mash hits the dead hard this time. Beautifully played. A little bit of a might game, so we're gonna wait it out again. Is he gonna swing? He immediately swings and Mash hits the E. Does go down here at the edge map though. Rocket trying to work the main generator, which is stuck at roughly 40% progress. Obi knows, and Obi gets the injury onto Claudette yet again.
Any attempt to continue working generators now it's over.
Absolutely.
It's just a question of how long Rocket's able to last, and I say that as Rocket gets a taste of that Scottish man's stick, and that looks like that'll be all. That
What
is
a
a
beautiful flick.
4K3 for for Ollie's Blight. That's a tall order for Team Rocket to be able to match. But
Yeah.
what a all around. We get to see the Mori as a treat.
And it's a
With
good
that,
Mori as well.
absolutely, and with that Jake fit, I can't help but feel it's a little bit deserved.
Very good. But yeah, Obi definitely showing up on the killers that he's truly confident on, right? We have 4K5 on Dracula, another 4K3 on the Blight. I am not sure if Rocket is also going to be the Blight player for Team Rocket, but 4K3 definitely an above average result for
Absolutely.
a Blight set. Usually you get like expected result would be anything between 4K1 and yeah, 4K0. Maybe you can get outs at some point. Some people are saying that Blight shouldn't 4K anymore. They still do, and they will continue doing so. So I'm not sure.
The 4Ks will continue until morale improves.
Yeah, it's really hard to come up with an average for some of these killers. Because people say, oh, in theory, Dracula should only get 5 stages, but then they end up getting 4K, right? So
Yeah.
people are doing some things in scrims that are working really well, but translating those to the stage has yet to happen.
That is always the way, isn't it? These things are far easier on paper than they are in practice. But no, speaking of easy, Obby made all of that look very, very easy. That was very nearly a 4K4.
Yeah, and I was very surprised that he decided to abandon that beautiful hook 3-gen ruin setup that he had in the top side of the map. That was looking like he was going to make it his home for the foreseeable future. But no,
Yeah.
he played it very aggressively. He took many risks, and the risks paid off and caught Team Rocket off
Absolutely.
guard. They couldn't keep up with the pressure at some point anymore. And seeing that confidence give Obi good results, even though his early game was quite weak. It was just a
Yeah,
really strong
absolutely.
first chase by Lexi. Obi is struggling to find the first survivor quickly. So yeah,
Yeah.
great quote unquote comeback, if you want to call it that.
From where I was sitting, it felt less like Obby was making a comeback, and more like he and more like a trap had been set up, you know, in the same way that what an absolutely spectacular result. And I can definitely see why Obby was so confident in taking that chase and basically letting his rune and his hook go. Because if he does camp that out, there is a good risk that those distant gens start to pop. It gives you probably a higher chance of getting that 4K and getting that survivor out the game quickly, but you will almost certainly lose at least one gen for it. Because on a map that large, even Blight can't control the gens on Shaq's side while also defending the hook and the ruin at the same time. So it does give the survivors, if they choose to just let if they choose to just let the survivor on hook effectively just die, at least one survivor will still be able to just hold down one for a while.
Yeah, Obi was playing for high win condition from the get-go, and he achieved it. So super impressive to make that work. Even though he did not even have a win condition to play to. This is him setting the win condition for Team Gorilla.
Yeah, raising the bar as high as possible, and just saying to Rocket, match me or match me or get run over.
Yeah, and again, it all worked so well for the survivors at the start, and that early game is really where you have to punish the Blight for missing the early rushes, for having just a chase that goes on for just a tiny bit too long. That's the point of the game where you stack a generator, get a high impact gen, maybe in the mid map, maybe in the 4 gen, out of the way by getting that early stack going. And they were able to get the deliverance as well, but Obi's pressure was just insurmountable for Team Rocket.
No, absolutely. It looks like we're just about to be getting into the new match. It does look like it is Rocket, the eponymous Rocket on Blight. Definitely a tall order, 4K3. And I should imagine Rocket is sweating bullets right now. I would not want to be in his position.
I think he's smiling. I'm pretty sure that they were probably expecting to have a bit of a shaky result in the set just because Obi's Blight is such a powerhouse.
Such a terror.
And if Gorillas tie to 1-1 here, that is probably expected. So anything above that would be very, very impressive. Again, Rocket mostly known as a 1v1 player. And going for a different build here. No corrupt, very, very aggressive with infectious flight, ruin, wretched fate, and eruption. Can he find maybe someone stealthing early? Unfortunately, fatigues on this filler without being able to convert that first rush into anything.
Infectious Fright is not a choice you see every day. Especially, that's a very 2021 perk, it feels like. That's a blast from the past.
It's been very popular in DVD League rule set scrim blocks because these, if you're scrimming a team that is not prepared for Infectious Fright, you might be able to catch the Deliverance player off guard because the Deliverance player usually wants to stealth close to the person that gets downed first, just to be in position to get that pull, to get the safe hook rescue, and to get that very powerful Deliverance perk active. But Infectious Fright often able to catch unprepared teams off guard and revealing the Deliverance player. So that is the whole idea behind the perk.
That makes a lot of sense. I should imagine a killer like Blight who is so strong, you can kind of afford the perk slots as opposed to having to dedicate them to gen control like some of the other killers would have to do, or like chase perks. Like kind of has the room to experiment.
Yeah, for sure. Again, you obviously sacrifice something in the progress, which in this case is Deliverance. Not Deliverance, is Corrupt Intervention, which is probably the most run perk in the competitive setting of all time, as Rocket does find the down onto Pedro. He does get infectious value in the distance. Is that going to be the survivor that he puts his sight on? Does he expect Team Gorilla not to expect infectious? It spits. He gets hit through the pallet drop. Can Rocket get a quick 2-tap onto our ace here? The Gorilla himself playing the pallet gym, playing the jungle gym, not falling for any Rocket mind games. Great patience as the break comes through. Spitz makes it to another tile. Anuk has come through, reset as well. And Dan seems to be cleansing the ruin.
Yeah, all the side is doing what they need to be doing. Spitz, unfortunately, getting clobbered around the corner. From the Blight hits always looking a little bit strange sometimes.
God, I love them. I got hit in public games today by a demonic Blight on 110 ping after I thought I had already crouched him, and I woke up after that hit.
I've always imagined Blight hits as like, you know, those hawker tables they used to carry around in like theaters in the 20th century, or ones where the people walking around selling food. Blight's like that. He just carries a tray in front of him, and that's where he hits you.
Okay, so jokes aside, this is an injured survivor. This is the tunnel out, and Dan is also in the field of view of Rockets. So Team Gorilla definitely not having the coordination you would expect from 3/4 of the Invictus roster here. But luckily for them, Spitz is the decisive strike survivor, as Pedro seems to be the target of Rocket's attention. Trying for a very sneaky shack mind game. The crowd does not catch Rocket off guard. Second hook onto Pedro. And Ana is cleansing the Wretched Fate in the distance as well. So Rocket will be left. Wait, the Wretched Fate was cleansed by Dan. Now Ana is working on the Ruin. And Rocket will be left with just Infectious Fright, which already has gotten him value. and Eruption, so way less slowdown compared to what Obi had available for him.
There are at least still some perks here. But with a couple of gens gone, Rocket kind of has to take no prisoners right now. This is where that challenging win con from Obi is gonna make continued Blight play extremely Oh, that is a very brazen resurgence reset right in Rocket's face.
Yeah, I was expecting it for the people there, but it is indeed just the resurgence reset. Dan obviously playing super aggressively.
For the people that we have at home.
Yeah, Dan being the Deliverance survivor, if he gets hooked, that's basically free for Team Gorilla. Buying so much more time for Pedro, who has this strong main building to loop now. Champion of Light as well. And Pedro, #1 ranked ladder player, as Rocket just finds Spitz on the edge map. Gives him a quick love tap.
This is to find the progress, the progress gen that Anna was working on as well, which is probably not exactly what they wanted for Christmas.
Yeah, Rocket's game has a lot of moving parts right now, but he just needs to connect them right now.
The plot twist down causes Pedro to scream.
Yeah, I've had so many games where people have gotten very upset at plot twist because plot twist triggers eruption. So if you don't call that you're plot twisting and people don't get off the gen, they get their aura revealed. Plot twist triggers infectious fright, and most importantly, you can deny your teammate deliverance if you plot twist too early because it doesn't count as a safe unhook if you down yourself. As Rocket finds a beautiful down onto Spitz, putting him into the dying state and getting a second hook for himself on the ace. Anna's still working away at that generator, but Rocket is going to hook towards it. Does he make this hook? Maybe one hit and Spitz is out?
Yeah, I think a hit take makes Spitz wiggle here, but I don't think that's going to be coming out.
Yeah, it's super risky to hit tank against an SD killer. You never see it done versus Nurse or Blight. As Anna unfortunately takes a tag over the pallet. Spitz is here, trying to be a nuisance with the base kit BT. But Rocket is having none of it.
This is Blight. Distance is for other people.
Oh, the 10% bonus move speed from the unhook coming through, allowing Spitz to shoot there.
Oh, Spitz still takes it down there, but this is the DS survivor. Yeah. Looks like Rocket is just saying, "Got it. If you got it, you got it. Show me what you got." And there comes a decisive strike. What you'd normally see from against a lot of killers would just be raw distance gain here if that decisive strike, but this is a Blight with 5 rush tokens. That's not going to happen.
The idea of using a decisive strike against both Nurse and Blight, as we see this generator dangerously close to popping. Anna goes down. Is Pedro able to finish it?
Oh, but the generator is completed.
Pedro gets it and gets the win condition for Team Gorilla as another gen pops in the distance. Oh, well played. What I was just talking about, the way that decisive strike is used in S-tier sets is you either beautiful fake by Pedrito. It's only gonna deny this tag by so much, but it's always nice to see the survivors making great use of the distance that they're gaining. You use decisive strike in combination with Lithe, and you try to die next to a window or a pallet because you know that 3-second, 4-second decisive strike stun isn't going to do anything against the Blight. So you combine it with Lithe, and that's how you make your distance. And we did see Spitz dropping the pallet there, being patient on it, trying to play into the Lithe as Rocket is fighting with Pedro over one more stage. Pedro makes it to the bot side. Spitz already opening the exit gate. This is the win for Team Gorilla. How many people can they get out of the gate?
Pedro's chases have been exceedingly confident. Like, I continue to be impressed by how well he's been holding up the Rocket's attention. I guess that's the virtue of having having a nice Jake outfit.
You like this one
from
better?
Last match, you know? That's how karma works, right?
Absolutely.
That's how that works.
Nonetheless, we're going to see the Mori onto the poor Jake yet again. Well played to both teams as Gorilla are able to tie it up 1-1.
Absolutely. What a show. What a show from Team Gorilla. Such a Obi's shall we say, forward approach to playing Blight in that first round. Very much set the bar, as we said, sky high for Rocket there, and the survivors very much play kind of what's the term? Playing it by the sheet music, so to speak. Everything seemed to work out broadly as it was supposed to. The decisive strike player taking the chases, the hexes going more or less when they needed to. Um, even the plot twist triggering infections was mostly more funny than anything. Yeah, they broadly had that game in their control seemingly for the entire time, and I think that showed in the final result.
Yeah, there was a bit of a hectic mid game in that middle part of the map where we had both Pedro and Spitz and Chase for a bit, and then the mid chase resurgence coming through, which is also the first time that I've ever seen that. But yeah, it worked out, and just knowing that you're able to barely make that, that's the difference between your average team and yeah, a truly
For
great
sure.
team.
It's an immensely brazen reset directly in front of the killer. Resurgence such a normal perk. It's
Oh
such a
yeah.
normal perk.
Honestly, it feels so good though when your teammate has resurgence. You unhook them, you don't bring unhook perks yourself because you're a greedy bastard. And then
Yep.
it's like, wait, you're already 70% healed? I love you. I'm not wasting time right now.
Like, I mean, For the People is a good perk and all, but why don't you just have For the People without the downside of For the People? You know, why don't you just do that?
Yeah, it is just so nice. And it is very strong. Luckily, we only allow it in sets where the killers are able to handle it. So I think it's only allowed in Nurse and Blight. And I think they'll be all right with that perk allowed. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm. We're not seeing the terrors of S tier being too inconvenienced by that one perk with Jill Valentine's face on it.
Oh, I have a question for you, Pixel.
Of course.
I'm sure you have been keeping an eye on the upcoming PTB.
Yes.
How do you like the character portraits? Is there one that sticks out to you?
Hmm. I've I think I like quite a few of them.
Mhm.
I think they vary in quality quite a
Mhm.
bit. I have to say, a big fan of the Bubba one because it clearly does just recycle his old key art. But
It's good
in their
art.
defense, it's really nice art. It's really nice. I'd say that and Vecna, actual Vecna, not Henry.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of them can feel a little bit, I want to say, like unexpressive. Like
Mhm.
if you showed me the one, say the artist, but what expression is she feeling? I wouldn't be able to tell you. She just looks kind of like that iShow Speed gif. Um, but no, I think when they're able to be expressive, I can really appreciate them.
Yeah.
Which is also why I like Charlotte looking so incredibly upset.
I'm glad
Clearly,
that you're bringing up Charlotte now.
yes, she's clearly upset because Victor isn't included in the art.
Exactly. I'm so upset. I thought they would look so cool together. And then
Yeah,
it's just Charlotte. It's the twins. Come on. We
yeah,
need we need both of them. Victor is
y-
the real star of the duo.
true. Do you know how what makes me really sad? There's
Tell
none for
me.
Bearmar.
Yes, that's
What
such a
the
robbery.
three Bearmar mains on planet Earth forgotten again?
Poor Cinder. I'm
Yeah,
so sad for them.
yeah. The character that only exists to be a sweater that you
Oh,
wear whenever it's bugged, which is about half the time seemingly.
that was a great bug when you just wouldn't make noise if you had
Hmm.
that sweater on. Beautiful.
Yeah, I believe it even came back for a patch as a little encore
Yeah,
because we
during
had
the anniversary, I think.
yes, yes, that brief period where they went, you know what? Let's raise the Bearmar player base by 7,000%.
Okay, the teams are ready. We have
Absolutely.
loaded into the Coal Tower, where we're seeing Team Rocket led by Rocket on the Trickster. And
On the balloon.
this has been Rocket's pick, which had me a little surprised because I know that Obi does like himself some trickery. He does play Trickster for Team Elysium, and he Yeah, he seemed excited when this killer was picked. Pedro playing this rock to perfection. Finally dropping the pallet. One more knife, two more knives, and there is the injury coming through.
Absolutely, yeah. And there comes the main event. Gonna to punish Pedro for finishing between tiles there. And that is a very quick down. Was that faster than the blight down?
Yeah, I think Pedro was just expecting Rocket to expect that he would stay on the rock, because it clearly doesn't make any sense to leave it, because you would be in the open and just get mowed down by the main event. Surely nobody would ever make that play. Well, Rocket didn't fall for it, and he downed Pedro quite quickly and gets a hook right on top of the generator that two people had been stacking as a solution. So all progress lost for Team Gorilla, and Rocket finding himself in a very solid position here.
Absolutely. Starts like this always remind me of the start of a game of pool, when the break happens and all the balls just fly everywhere. And that was more or less how that down into hook happened. It's like, hey, the high progress gen, scatter.
Yep, it's gone. You better work something else. And we do see a 4-gen on the top side of the map. Of course, Trickster very limited when it comes to map mobility, so gonna have a pretty tough time holding a 3 or 4-gen. And we also see our survivors already working away at those top side generators, so this 3-gen won't be long for the world.
Indeed. Well, at least he's 1 of 15, unlike what he'll be in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's gonna be very interesting. Stumpy.
Yes.
And I already talked about it a bit, and I think it's gonna make him quite a bit weaker in the competitive setting, because you can just pre-run him so well at 110 if everybody's on the same page with comms and everything.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people saying he's liable to get buffed off this PTB, which would make a lot of sense. But we'll have to see when it comes. But in the meantime, we do have a chase onto Spitz here. They did let Pedro drop a stage, which is valid given Trix's ability to camp, but Rocket not quite being able to fully commit to Spitz, and that laceration to K stop kicking in, just to defend both his hooks and any gens that a few errant knives might be able to reach.
Yeah, Rocket is very willing to trade the elimination onto Pedro for 3 generators being completed. That is the gamble that he's going for here, and he is praying that nobody from Team Gorilla is going to attempt the unhook here. Of course, unhooking against a Trickster leads to a trade at best, and to a 2-slack situation at worst, so it's always very risky. Does Rocket leave too early here? We saw Dan hovering in the wings, but no, perfectly timed. Rocket
Pedro
gets the
dies
kick.
right on time.
Yeah, this is a handshake from both teams. Both teams are saying, okay, this is what we have to do. This is going to be our game plan. And we now need to see some individual chase performances by the survivors, and those are really going to be deciding for the outcome of this game.
Yeah, it's looking like our 2 survivors are on 2 separate gens. It can be hard to tell with those little progress bars, but they are slightly different. They're not splitting. So
yeah,
they're not working together on a gen. So
this is good, because they completed the generator in the main building so early. Rocket now permanently has a 5% haste boost on this top side of the map, and that's going to be really nice.
Oh, for sure. Especially with multiple active gens in that corner of the map as well. Rocket's going to be schmoovin'.
He will be smoothing, but he also needs to reload. He's playing into the main event here.
Yeah.
Dan desperately looking for something to light off. Does not find anything. And yeah, doesn't even get injured from this main event use. And now Rocket has to reload. Spitz will be able to pop his generator in shack.
That's a major distance gain from Dan there. Getting off scot-free with a few knives in your back. Guess it's not a particularly huge deal.
Really well played for sure. Usually you expect to give up at least 1 health state when you are the target of that main event, and if you're a bit out in the open, but Dan just playing the tiles beautifully. Ana pre-dropping this pallet, holding great distance against Rocket on this main building. batteries included, but not making the difference just yet. And Rocket really struggling to get his second down after securing the death onto Pedro.
Absolutely. It reminds me of, we've seen it many times before, sort of just prodding and probing and poking at the survivors, trying to find a weakness.
Yeah, you're trying
And
to
try to
find the
find it
weak
quickly.
link, but
Yeah, and trying
you're
to find it
playing against
quickly.
these survivors, so
Yeah.
good luck with that.
Yeah. You know, to use metaphor, you're trying to break into Fort Knox here by brute forcing the password. And these survivors are not giving it up easily. Spitz already got their gen over halfway completed. Rocket's out here is to hope that there's an incoming eruption in his future, but the survivors are not handing it over easily.
Yeah, realistically speaking, he wants to secure one more down and camp that down into a death hook while the rest of the survivors escape. So playing for 6 stages, 2 fresh here, which is absolutely the expected result for Trickster. And the survivors will have to work very hard to not give that result to Rocket. Spitz doing his best on this filler, lasting through the whole main event.
Giving over a health state, but let's see if he can somehow unzone himself. The power of the 115 man with bat ends up getting that down.
Is this a pain res? It is! No, it's not. Okay. Rocket has to hook, and now he has to just camp this. Get your knives out.
Reload, and then camp.
Yeah.
No.
So really nothing out of the ordinary here. 6 stages, 2 fresh. I am pretty sure that Rocket is not gonna leave this hook because well, he's trying to be a bit of a nuisance onto Dan for a distance. Is he going for a Hail Mary here? Does he think that Team Gorilla is going to get a better result than 6 stages 2 fresh?
Yeah, I could 100% see this desire if 6 stages if 2 kills is expected. I could see the desire to just mop up an extra survivor and just set the survivors up. Maybe give the survivors a tiny bit of a window to work with here, but just forcing forcing Team Gorilla's killer to just take maybe an extra, like, just give a little bit more to do. Not a huge difference of like one stage, but it's an advantage.
This is looking to backfire quite a bit, though. They have the gate open, and
there's the first health state. That's going to be a lot of distance gained from our wonderful Dan.
Spitz is here to take it down.
Oh, there goes the buzzsaw. That is main event. Let's see if he can squeeze it down through with it. But it is main event. It's a little bit clunky to use.
They can play for a edge escape here.
Oh,
okay,
there goes the down Spitz.
Takes the down. Dan is not out yet, though. He has to rotate over the map to make it to that other gate. That's on 11. Can he make it?
Spitz crawls to the gate. Spitz crawls to the gate, forcing Rocket to take the pick there. He can't let Spitz keep crawling. He has to just take his hook.
I see you, Anna. Dropping the cracker, dropping a pallet, making sure the killer knows where you are.
Absolutely, making a bit of a statement there. And there we go. That is going to be 2 kills, 6 stages for Team Rocket there. As you said, the Trickster result. You get a killer who's this reliable at camping and this unreliable at getting to the hooking position in the first place. That does not. None of that surprises me, and none of that should really surprise anyone, I think.
Yeah, it really surprised me that that Rocket went out of his way to try and get more, because had that backfired, it would have been horrible.
Absolutely.
So a bit of a risk that in the end didn't pay off, but also didn't get punished.
Yeah, it just sort of didn't really happen. You know, it was a valiant attempt, and I could definitely see the logic behind Rocket's little gambit there, because all it would have taken there, 1 down, and then 6 stages become 7. That's, there's that bit that's that bit of an extra challenge for Team Gorilla's killer, but looks like that's not all we're going to be seeing. So just a fairly bog standard. Sorry. 2 kills, 6 stages. Really, that's all it's going to be. That wasn't me yawning as a
Trickster game.
As an indictment of Trickster. No.
Give me more blind, please.
No, that's just the way it goes. A certain little lady has decided to join us, by the way, as I'm sure you can see it's got
Oh,
the cameras on.
let's
I,
go.
absolutely. I usually have her have the door of her tank open while I'm working or something, and she'll just come out whenever she wants to. So we have the wonderful Cassie joining us right now.
Hey, Cassie, you're so precious.
Yeah. Let's see if she has anything to say to the viewers.
Oh,
There
that's
we go.
so cool. Big Cassie kiss.
Yeah.
She looks so long from that angle.
Yeah, well, she is long. She's long and skinny. She's about 4 feet long. But does not look it when she's hanging up on my arm like this. She'll so you are being watched. You are being watched, Gorilla. You are being watched. She doesn't have any hands, so she might struggle to implement much of what she's learning. But I'm trying to get her to play Legion.
I think a snake could do that.
Yeah, again, like no hands, but guided by sound and movement. So it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing, right?
Just get a lot of injuries.
Yeah, she can figure it out. AMS.
But yeah, we're getting the lobby ready.
Absolutely.
Obi seems to have some problems starting up his game, just as you mentioned earlier, DVD being a very unique little piece of software.
Yeah, the most reliable game that's ever existed. Although most of my recent issues with it have been with easy anti-cheat more than DVD itself. At this point, if there's a gamble whenever you open it, and it's like, oh well, are we going to open, or are we going to sit there making your PC sound like a jet engine taking off for 2 minutes before going? Actually, no, we've got an EAC error. Can you try again?
I swear, DVD is the game that makes my graphic card roar the loudest. Even if I'm playing Silent Hill F on very high settings, it's nothing compared to Dead by Daylight somehow.
No. I think the only game I've played that gave a PC more trouble in recent memory was Alan Wake 2. And Alan Wake 2 is gorgeous.
Yes.
DBD is not.
No.
although with that new map, maybe I'm being too harsh.
I was honestly
judged it too
surprised.
harshly.
I was honestly surprised that they could make a map actually look good. Don't get me wrong, I do like the aesthetic of the Ormond Lake Mine, but Ormond Lake Mine is not a pretty map, right? It's a very gritty, abandoned map, and the new map, it's very pretty. It's also very hard on the eyes, so I hope there's gonna be some accessibility features. No, let's be reasonable here. That's not gonna happen.
Well, you never know. You never know.
You never know.
If nothing else, I'm sure the people who manage the filters and everything, who always putting up new filter options on Reshade are going to be coming in clutch.
Shout out to my friend Lethia.
Although I haven't seen the new map on colorblind mode, so I'm ready for some wild colors when I watch streams to see people with colorblind mode turned on for that map.
Okay, we have loaded into the trial. We see a bit of an adaptation here. Obi decides to run Bamboozle instead of batteries. So both ways of dealing with loops that are pretty tough for the Trickster. Mainly the main building and the shack. Being able to make those a little easier.
Absolutely. A slightly awkward corrupt spread. It isn't really a clean side of the map where the gens are corrupted. It's sort of like an arc.
Yeah, and Obi is already attacking the gen that is open in the bot side because he knows that Rocket will be working away at it if he lets him do so. And Rocket does not get tagged here. Bamboozle coming through. Little cheeky double vault. And this is what I mean when I say that Obi is a very experienced Trickster player. Those exact oi, that's a bit of an oopsie.
Yeah, Rocket taking a back full of knives at the worst possible moment. There's a main event on the table, but it's doubtful that Obi is going to feel the need to use it. We will see.
Cheeky blinds with the Iron Will making a great use of it. But yeah, Obi is really, really experienced in getting just the amount of knives in that he can. And we see a body block coming through, not the easiest
Oh.
thing to do against Trickster, and finally Obi does get the down.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. There goes the first gem. It's looking like he's taking an opportunity to maybe probably not to commit to a full attempted hook or anything. We've got one knife and one laceration point to go, and he misses.
Oh
Unfortunate. He does have main event he can use if he really wanted to get some more knives in, but it looks like he's just going to take the tag and take the pick.
Yeah, for sure. We have.
That is if he can find Rocket. There we go.
He
I was
does
going to say, if Rocket had crawled off into Narnia with...
Oh,
and Ollie wasn't
man.
able to find it.
I really hope they fix the freaking pallet saves. It's so sad because these are not bad players, right? These
They're
players
not,
would never miss a pallet save like that. It's just that on this patch, it's almost impossible to get a pallet save from the same side that the killer is standing on. You need to be, you need to have that little bit of empty space so you can get the prompt. Otherwise, it just doesn't show up anymore. Okay, so Obi has a hook in the basement. Team Rocket was able to complete one generator. Overall, this is a faster start for Team Rocket than it has been for Gorilla. Obi in a pretty advantageous situation as he's trying to take some cheeky shots onto Mash from a distance.
It's like, hey, I see you on the jet. Get off, get off, get off, get off.
Just tickling a bit, you know? Is he gonna try the same on the main?
I guess he's like, well, I'm going to be here around this hook for a
Oh
while.
my god, he hits that. No, that's a
He
missed
hits
skill
it
check.
and forced a failed skill check.
Oh my god, that's so good. And that's the wretched Fate survivor as well, so that
That's
missed
really
skill
funny.
check is gonna hurt.
It is indeed.
So Obi is taking a great risk here. He knows the position of all the injured survivors.
There
Well,
we
he
go.
knows the
There's
position
some
of Tavo
scratchies.
and of Mash. So it means only Lexi can pull, and I think Obi was making a gambit here, expecting the injured survivor not to pull out of the basement. But that is just what Lexi did, and it was the perfect call in this situation. So
There goes the base kit BT. But yep, there was no second survivor, so it looks like Lexi's gonna force the pull. Right back onto, presumably back onto that basement hook.
And this is a huge difference because Pedro died on the first hook when Team Rocket was playing killer. But Rocket got
Only taking a bit
away
more-
with just one hook stage, and it's only a basement trade. So the survivors should have enough time to complete all the generators if Obi just decides to camp out Lexi here. And that would mean less stages in total for the killer. So
It would.
Obi knows that as well, of course, so he has to play aggressively now. Try to make anything happen, try to get a new down and a new survivor.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is a very British term, but I'm going to say it. Obi's got to get his arse in gear and start racking up some more hooks if he's going to, especially with that Richard Fate gone.
Yeah, that was, I think, the last thing that encouraged his decision to camp this survivor, because it's obviously not the obsession, which means that the obsession's generator speed will be slowed down significantly. But with that gone, Obi is sweating bullets right now. He has to hope that Lexi hits stage 2 and that he can get a quick down onto Tabo here.
Unfortunately, finding the one side who happens to still be healthy, but Lexi does drop the stage. There goes one gen remain. There goes down to one gen remaining. Tavo about to get injured there. There comes the main event now available. It just, I get. Obi didn't use it last time. Oh, but there comes main event this time. Just immediately
Oh,
cancelling
it's
it.
the balanced landing survivor.
That's unfortunate. And there comes the pull coming out.
I think Obi is double. No, I thought he was double vaulting the window, just making it so that Tavo cannot play that with balanced landing anymore.
Indeed.
He-
Oh, there's Mash.
Also representing a fresh hook stage. So
That-
both
yes,
Mash
that's
and
important.
Tavo are great targets here.
Absolutely. And there goes a quick and brutal down onto Mash. Oh. Was that a
Bless you.
timely reload or a pickup attempt? We'll never know.
No, that was intentional.
Yeah.
But if you're coping on survivor side, you can be like, hey, made you take the
Yeah.
locker.
Yeah, you can just pretend. You can just pretend.
Okay, this hook changes everything because
does.
if Obi decides to just camp this out, yes, he will be at 6 stages, but he has 3 fresh hooks, so the win condition would be
Oh,
met.
he does not take it.
He does not take it at all. He wants to play this aggressively. He knows he can go for more. Is this going to pay off?
the greedler. He's full of greed.
Oh no!
Well, as we've seen Obby play greedy before. We saw it in the blight sets, and it did pay off spectacularly. Oh,
Nah, that's not.
nah,
an
not
angle.
quite. It was a valiant attempt though. Looks like he's trying to get his Scourge Hook and kill off onto Lexi. That's going to be the 5th stage coming down. First death on the board. Everybody's injured. Rocket does have some gen progress, it looks like. But not a huge amount, and certainly nothing that Robbie couldn't interrupt in a timely fashion. The gen split also seems to, I would say, favour Robbie in this situation. The gen split's pretty tight.
Absolutely. And he is zoning Rocket into the bot side of the map now by chasing him in this direction or from this direction. Taking a couple shots through the cracks. Is Rocket going to go down here?
Looks like
One
a
more?
knife. One more knife. That's all you got to do. One more knife. There we
he
go.
gets it. Oh, that's so rough for Rocket.
Yeah. And if Obby just again takes this hook and camps it out, that'll be 2 kills, 7 stages. That will comfortably pack him up.
He's
But
playing so aggressively again. He wants the 4K.
he's got no fear. This man has no. This man has
That's
no
head-on, that's
fear
head-on.
whatsoever. Yeah.
Get out of there. Get
There
out of
we
there.
go. Wait, you're not knives.
He actually got it.
Yeah.
And Tava is going to get the pickup onto Rocket. I'm not sure why Obi is taking all these risks.
He's showboating.
Yes,
He's
he
showboating.
is. He really is trying to make the statement that, hey guys, whatever happened in that unknown set, I don't care and I don't like you anymore. I want to 4K every other set now.
Absolutely. Man has got no fear. Maybe he should have a little bit of fear, but he doesn't seem to have any. There comes Rocket.
I think he wants to force like this and get the 4K one, which is
Yeah.
honestly a pretty insane result.
Absolutely.
No way, Rocket.
There goes the pull. Rocket forcing the pickup, forcing him onto the shoulder there. Tavo
Yeah.
presumably moving into position to get Mash off the floor there. Yeah, there we go.
Pain
There
was
goes
coming
the pain
through
res
as well.
coming down.
Yeah.
The longest range main event we've ever seen in human history.
But I do think that at this point, Team Rocket have admitted defeat. The win
More or
condition
less.
has been met. And
Yeah.
it's wild to see Obi playing with this much calculated confidence and risk. Because
Yeah.
he took risks, but he just knew how to get the payoff.
Yeah.
And I find that super impressive.
I've always been a fan of the phrase "a calculated risk is no risk at all,"
Yeah.
and Obby is proving that might just be true, because we saw this on the Blight game. We see it on. Obviously, it's a completely different beast on Blight. You know, a killer with amazing map control who can kind of make up for mistakes a bit more freely due to that speed. Trickster is not a forgiving killer in terms of making macro mistakes,
Yeah.
but Obby is playing this like a fiddle.
And you can maybe see now why I was a little bit surprised as to why Rocket would pick Trickster, because I think, considering that not many teams or people play Trickster, Obi's Trickster is one of the better ones out there. So yeah, very, very surprised by that. Oh, nice stun by Tavo. Just playing for style points now with the win condition already achieved by OB.
Perhaps it's fitting for the Trickster set that half of this matches have been Obby playing for style points.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Team Gorilla is going to go up 2-1.
Absolutely.
And the next set is the Dark Lord. And we saw
Vladimir.
Obi get a 4K5. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's... Okay?
Okay, you two. Okay, you two.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's better. It's possible to get a better result than 4K5. I don't think that is possible. So, yeah. Obi really...
Don't tell Obby that. He'll try anyway.
He'll try. Come, okay. Oh, imagine though. So, with the win condition being met already, and these players being friends, there is just
Yeah.
a bit of fun happening here.
Just
I
playing around,
know.
having fun with Obi, yeah. As is your right.
Fun in my horror party game. Oh, nicely
That's what's
done.
supposed to
Gets the
happen.
down during the pallet job, and we're gonna get Amari on the shack floor.
No one's ever allowed to have fun playing DB. It doesn't make any sense.
Boxed like a
Clearly,
fish.
there's clearly some sort of bug. People actually having fun playing Dead by Daylight. That's messed up. Well, there's a successful trickster set for Obi and Team Gorilla. Trickster's not a killer I've seen a huge amount of in like super high level play, so I didn't really know what to expect going into this. But color me impressed. That's all I'm going to say. That was some very very tight tricks to play from frankly both killers.
It was looking a bit rough at the start, just because Gorilla just had such a phenomenal start. No,
Sure.
Rocket had just a phenomenal start in the game against Gorilla, where he was on the Trickster. Just being able to interrupt the gen early, camping out the first survivor to stage 3. But what Obi was doing way more consistently was finding injuries on survivors that he did not necessarily commit to. He would just take his injuries onto different people, leave them for later, and would then continue to pick them off one by one in the later stages of the game, taking a risk
Absolutely.
in doing so, but yeah, just working out flawlessly in his favor.
Yeah. Obi's clearly very very aware of all the risks that he's taking. He knows what he's doing. But he has a very good measure of how much he can get away with in terms of allowing an unhook to happen, or dropping a chase which might initially seem like a strange chase to drop, you know.
Yeah.
But it clearly all pays off. He knows again what he can get away with. He knows what resources the survivors have available. He has seemingly a very good sense of which survivors have which perks when they need to be worried about. We saw that especially in the Blight set.
Yeah.
Um,
That was really impressive to me.
Without a doubt, it's just what we're seeing here is a formidable amount of game sense, like backed up by like just very solid chasers, you know, and perhaps more than solid, I'd say the word is reliable, and that's important when so much of your game plan revolves around your split-second decision making, knowing how long you're going to spend in chase with X and Y person, knowing which chases are reasonable to take and which ones aren't. That's like you can have the best game sense in the world, but if your chases are unreliable in length, it doesn't matter because you can't make reasonable calls with them.
Yeah. Great summary. And what else did I want to say? I think I lost the plot right there. But yeah, I think the only thing that Obi did not calculate for was the injured survivor going for the unhooked basement. And I also think that it's so fun to see Obi going for those snipes on Trickster. If you're familiar with him as a player, you know him as someone who will orbital on Huntress in like DVD League. So seeing him go for the same long range shots on Trickster, super nice. Even though those are less lethal, of course.
It's got to be done. You know, people always say, "Oh, Huntress orbitals don't work if the survivors have a pair of eyes and a brain cell." But you know, someone's got to draw a line in the sand and say, "No, actually, we're going to do something cool today." And remote control blowing up gens from across the map with tricks and knives. I think that qualifies.
That's a new one for sure.
Indeed.
It's so funny because I've seen Obi hit some incredible snipes in Hunters in Comp DBD, but then also missing shots on stationary targets. So he either goes big or he goes home. But right now it's looking like Gorilla is not going home. It's looking like they are trying their best to take this tournament for themselves, being up 2-1 and now on their very own pick of the Dark Lord.
Yeah, I would if I was in Team Rocket's position, I'd be quaking in my boots right now.
Yeah, because
seeing how confident Obi's been in these first two killings. I'm not sure if Obi is their Dracula, but I'd probably be praying whichever gods I held dear that he's not.
Yeah. Obi is, in fact, going to be on Dracula. He is getting some server connection errors right now, so requiring the game to be restarted. We apologize for the delay. If you are enjoying the broadcast so far, give us a follow. Make sure we can keep doing what we're doing over here because we love being able to provide you high-level tournament gameplay every other week with a prize pool of $100. Thank you so much to Correct Media for making all of this possible.
Yeah,
But yeah,
could not do it without him.
yeah, and I love doing this. It's just so nice. I'm always looking forward to Tenax. I know people look forward to playing in the tournament as well. It's just a good time, and it's even though we're seeing some very known players right now in the finals, we also have a bunch of lesser known teams, inexperienced players just playing competitively in a tournament with low stakes and lots to play for. Yeah, if you are a comp player yourself, if you have a team and you want to get started, get your first little tastes of a tournament, go sign up. We might be reducing the amount of teams in the future, but for now, we would love to have you.
Absolutely. No, I've always spoken very highly because of all of the people I interact with in my little content creator bubble. It's very much not really a lot of them don't really grasp much about like high level high level DVD, about high level competitive play. It is very odd that my audience tends to oscillate between people who are very, very enfranchised, meaning I probably have a higher than average in terms of investment from players, but that investment can be either like very, very experienced tenured players or people who have really invested in drawing their favorite characters kissing. So it's like it's been a bit of a I've been trying to kind of glue those two groups together under the umbrella of the umbrella of my community, and I think Tenax has been a big part of that. And I get people who don't really who might necessarily engage with some of the bigger leagues, and maybe dispel some misconceptions by bringing them over here.
Yeah,
What I'm trying to do anyway.
That's such a great way of tackling all of it because, of course, as a content creator with an audience, you have a certain responsibility. And if people are all of a sudden like, huh, what's he doing with those sweaty comp people? Aren't they like the scum on Twitter or something like that?
The main antagonists of Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, for sure. The people who teabag me in my public games. No, there is
Yes.
a lot of
saved me one time 2 years ago, and I'm never going to forget it.
There is a lot of sportsmanship, a lot of pride, a lot of competition, but most of all, there is love for the game, and I think that is
Absolutely.
what unites all the players and all the teams and all the viewers, and I think that's beautiful. And I think we should focus on that and make comp DBD a more accessible thing for everybody.
For sure, especially in the modern age of DBD, where it's fashionable to be upset about literally everything all the time. Whether you're right to be or not, sometimes you're very much in your right to be. It's just the way it's got to be, But it's what drew me to Tenax over, because obviously when Zach was putting this together, I believed in kind of his vision for a more approachable league, and I think him and Team Tenax have delivered on that really well.
Yeah, big shout out to Zach. Big shout out to everybody working behind the scenes to make all of this possible.
Yeah.
We are on Family Residence 2. We'll be switching to Wolf form, hoping to catch a rare Sand Orb, but the survivors are very well aware there is no running at the start of the game unless you're Rocket because you've been caught stealthing wearing a bright red Claudette outfit.
Rocket has no fear.
Oh, did you see him peek from behind
Yes,
that pallet? That looked so cute. Rocket is going to be the first chase here. Does not get mind gained by the wolf farm as Obi breaks the pallet. Obi, interestingly, deciding to break the pallet from the edge map and giving Rocket access to the map again. But Rocket does not make it to any tile, just dies near the corner of the map. Pretty fast chase for Obi, and that is what the Dark Lord is all about. If you're able to catch one of the survivors out of position before they made it to anything that's like a strong loop for you against Dark Lord, you will have an easy time getting it first down, and that's exactly what Obi showed us.
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't extremely. It wasn't a pretty damn fast chase for Obi, but to Rocket's credit, the hook location was at least a little bit awkward. It was a Scourge hook, but it's not as immediate as it is on a gem. It's not similar on an active one. I can saw people coming out, Mash deciding to lovingly transfer our health state over to Rocket.
Oh, Obi keeps missing those wolf M1s. He's been doing the same earlier in the set, but this time it was caused by the base kit or borrowed time speed buff that Rocket was still affected by. Obi blocks the window, and this is going to be another quick down onto Rocket. I think the pounce backed out there. I think only the first part of the pounce came through. Can he hit the Hellfire, or is he going to go for an M1 here?
Are you telling me DBD's dash attacks are buggy? That's never happened before. Going straight for the bat vault into break. Hoping to cut down any distance Rocket will gain.
This is such a costly chase for Obi.
It absolutely is.
Can he dodge another Hellfire? He shouldn't. He shouldn't, and he can't. Well played by Obi. Getting the down, we see Ace hovering, but no pallet saves this patch, and this is the second hook onto Rocket. But we're also seeing the second gen very close to completion, as it does pop right in front of Obi's face. He does know that an injured Mia is very close by.
And there she is. Oh, are we getting a mouthful of pallet there?
Can he get the another dodge? Beautifully played.
These survivors are really giving Obi a run for his money.
Tomo's really feeling himself, emoting every single time now. Again, these players know each other. It's the grand finals, and it's not something you should do in your custom games, you know. But in this situation, it's all fair. It's all
in good fun. It's all in good fun.
Can Rocket manage to stealth out Obi here? Obi has an idea where Rocket should be, but Claudette is long gone, and another for the people comes through. These survivors are recovering super well. I think it was so costly that pounce attack did not connect.
Absolutely. And then the inability to find Rocket right after that. Oh, there goes a pounce onto Lexi, but again, just taking his tag and moving on, confident that if he does find Rocket, no one will be able to take hits at least. That's something.
Yeah, that's something for sure.
Oh, there's a blast mine.
We do have 3 survivors injured here, and we see Rocket healing one of his teammates back up. Precious seconds being won by the blast mine. That's also a perk that is usually heavily restricted in most sets. So allowing it here, leading to a bit of survivor-sided gameplay. Finds the down onto Mash there. Beautiful little pounce around the rock.
Multiple eruption procs, exactly what we need to see here. We're going to see a Scourge coming out likely as well. Those gens getting knocked significantly from 2 eruptions and a Scourge happening in sub 10 seconds.
Yeah, even though the survivors have been controlling the damage that Obi has been dealing to them quite well, they are still not out of the woods yet. Tavo's still injured, and Rocket is still on death hook, playing aggressively for the unhook here, if I'm seeing that correctly, as Lexi juking the wolf for just a tiny bit longer. Obi can connect it though. Lexi loses a bit of distance, and Obi sees Rocket on the cross. Didn't he just see Rocket crossing, or was that near?
I think
he misses the flick.
Near, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was near. We saw a pool of blood. That's on me. So Obi has information on where everybody is. He knows that Rocket played for the pull. He knows that he forced Nia off the gen, and he knows that he was in chase with the ace. So perfect information for Obi. What can he do with it?
Oh, it's an enormous reset though. We just saw Mash and Tavo both get healed, which means Mash's full people is once again locked and loaded.
Yeah, I think that was second wind coming through for Mash. Very commonly paired with For the People. It's just a really strong and reliable combo. If you are able to get the unhook without getting the Hellfire to the face immediately, and as you were saying, that's a really big reset, and Obi has to make something happen here. He lost his hook, he lost his tunnel out, and he no longer has many injuries. Now finds Mash, who is able to dodge the Hellfire beautifully.
A little bit of haste from the center orders there, giving the M1. Critically, because that was the M1, that does mean that Pounce is now going to be trying to be used again.
Oh my god, the dodges are so good right now.
Mash juking like a legend. That's going to be a light to unzone himself.
And this is the obsession that you're chasing, caused by For the People, of course. Which means that one of Obi's perks right now, Wretched Fate, which is so powerful, does nothing because it's the obsession that you're chasing.
But I believe the perk's already gone anyway. I think Wretched
Really?
Fate's already been extinguished. It was extinguished a while ago, I think.
Yeah, you're right. So less bad of a chase for Obi, but still a really long chase for Mash.
Yeah.
We've not seen a gen pop in quite a while, so we can expect all of these generators to be roughly around 70%.
Yeah,
But the survivors do have pressure on all of them.
These guys very much making Obi work for everything he gets. But critically, the 4 people survivor is now one of the servers on Death Hook.
Yeah.
So it makes 4 people a little bit less valuable, but it has most certainly done its job already.
Oh, absolutely. Just allowing Rocket to stay in the game for so much longer, getting crucial heals off, working generators unperturbed, and this blast mine is probably what the team is going to coordinate their unhook around. Never mind, Mash has already been unhooked, but Obi cannot commit it. He knows his generators are too close to getting completed, and he needs a quick down for Eruption yesterday.
And a pain res would also be pretty handy at this point.
Yeah, that was
A kill
Tavo.
would be nice, but a pain res will do.
That was Tavo calling that he would go down, so Rocket let go of his gen, but Rocket could have actually completed that gen because Tavo just lasted a couple of extra seconds. Now Obi finds the time to make it back to the generator. Going to wait for his Eruption to come off cooldown, sees Rocket's stretch marks in the distance, taunting him. Is he able to commit to this Claudette? Or is it too late for a
shock pallet?
Survivors
Every
are
precious
reset
second
again.
seeping away. He just takes a Shrek pallet, and the Shrek pallet leaves to get his eruption kick on. That was what he was doing.
That was so risky.
It really was.
He really was banking for there to be no survivor close to complete that generator.
That's skulking around.
Mash gets the unhook. And how long can Tavo last here? Obi has gotten a couple of fresh hooks. He's only missing the one onto Lexi. But he loses his target and just kicks this main generator. The 3-gen is very loose. I don't think this is quite holdable. Also has nothing to TP to on this very edge map gen. That is at high progress.
That might have been holdable if there was a window vault there, but there isn't. There's no way that Obi's able to control all 3 of those gens comfortably, especially not with that one being the one that's got progress on it. The survivor's getting a reset. This game has. I always want to say slipped out of Obi's fingers, but it never feels like it's really been in them to begin with.
I think we would be watching a very different game if that second pounce when Rocket was unhooked and on this very
For sure.
this very gym. Had that not bugged out, the game would have gone so much differently.
Completely agree.
It's unfortunate, right?
Actually picking an extremely awkward death spot there. If I remember correctly, Obi does have access to a pain res. Oh, those hooks are a little far. Yeah, he needs to get that pain res. He doesn't have a choice.
He does. The gen regression limit is also going to come into play. Lexi won't wiggle out here, but we see the survivors splitting multiple generators, just putting pressure all across the map, and Obi teleports to the main building, expecting this gen to be doubled by Tavo and potentially Mash, with Rocket working that edge map gen that he's been working all game. He does find Mash, who's Death Hook, and he has not much to play for in this corner. Lithe not available because he already used it previously. Looking for a little spin, not able to avoid the hit. Oh,
And there goes the down.
yeah.
That is the kind of chase speed we were looking for this entire match. But that's going to be a finally, seemingly at long last, a kill coming down onto Mash. Now let's see if Obi can wrangle control of the remaining gens, because I had to say it, didn't I? I
Yeah,
had to
you
say
did.
it. I'm sorry, Obi. It's my fault.
The last generator does get completed. Now, Rocket, who has been spotted by Obi, is unfortunately the least valuable target. Obi is aware and does not fall for Rocket's bait. Knows that Rocket is playing aggressively so that Lexi can potentially get away. Does get another hook here. And that is looking like 9 stages for Fresh.
It looks like it, yes. So all in all, I can very much tell that Obi's that Obi's might not be Obi might not be feeling too hot about this result. A lot of the game was felt like it was slipping out of his control. But nine stages for Fresh. We've seen worse.
Yeah, it's still pretty good. And
Yes.
it is common to see 7 stages for Dark Lord, but it does feel like Family Residence is just a tiny bit more deadly than Ratchet Shop tends to be. So we're going to have to see very coordinated play from Team Gorilla. I
Absolutely.
think it really depends on the survivor side playing exceptionally to be able to get a result that is better than, that is lower than 9 stages for Fresh, because this set is heavily 4K favored, I would say, from what we've seen recently, from what we've seen in the past. Because Dracula is one of those few killers that are not very affected by the 15-second base kit endurance / speed changes. Because if you're just holding a charged Hellfire to the survivor's head who just got off the hook, they're not going to make anything if you just 2-tap them with a Hellfire into M1, right?
No, absolutely. There's only really so much you can do. I always called the instant hit on survivors unhooking. I always called it the Konami tech, where you can hit both the you're hitting both the hooked and hooked and unhooking survivor. Because obviously both Pyramid Head and Dracula excel at that, being able to get the double hit. And while I should doubt these players would be giving you that for free unless they can absolutely avoid it, the principle I think very much still applies. A killer who
Yes.
can just strip away your base BT like it's nothing, and then catch up to you quickly with 2 different catch-up tools.
And it's a very interesting meta game that has evolved around it, because Dracula can camp very well. So it's on the survivors to punish the camping. But do you have someone close for the Anuk so that as soon as the Dracula leaves, the Anuk will come through? Or is that last person doing generators, and if you camp, you committed too much?
Absolutely. No, I think what you witnessed there was kind of the other side of the coin after watching Obi's very explosive, very confident play in the last couple of sets. We saw on Trickster and Blight a lot of calculated risks that paid off, a lot of very aggressive play, being kind of greedy for those stages. And that game we saw the other end of the spectrum. We saw Obi having to fight for every last scrap and having to play super conservatively, having to drop a lot of chasers,
Yeah.
having to brush dangerously close to the gen kick limit on multiple occasions, breaking Shack Pilot and immediately doubling back to get your eruption kick off now that it's off cooldown. It was a lot of. It was very. He got backed into a corner for a lot of that game, and while he got out of that corner pretty comfortably, or at least he handled himself as well as could be expected. We saw a very different side to him compared to what we
Yes.
saw in the last couple of sets.
And it's super important. Like, get yourself a killer player that can do both, right? Because
Absolutely.
if your killer player is Feast and Famine, yeah, they're gonna get you the 4K3s, they're gonna get you the 4K2s, but they're also gonna get you like the 3-stage games, you know? So
Yeah.
if you have a killer player who can adjust to the situation accordingly and read it perfectly, that's what sets them apart from like the good killers and makes them a truly great killer, because many people would have panicked, many people would have overcommitted, many people maybe wouldn't have known how to play from behind or from ahead, but then the game slipping away and you needing to climb back into it. And Obi just showing his experience and his confidence in making the right decision every time. So 9 stages for Fresh, still super respectable. And I think the
Absolutely.
survivors could have gotten more outs, so less stages for Obi, had Obi misjudged the situation just once. I think,
For sure.
considering the spot that he was put in, he played it to the best outs he could have.
Hard agree. That entire match, you could see him walking on knife's edge. You could see that the game was very precarious, and while obviously it did still wind up in in out, there was like it was kind of the term managed decline almost comes to mind, but emphasis in his case very much on managed. Um, did not did not let the survivors get away with anything up to a certain point. Very much a case of taking what you can get and letting patience win the day.
Yeah, and
And
also taking as much as you get, right?
Yeah.
You don't just take what is being thrown to you. You still take what you want, but
Yeah,
you
you take them
accept that
prisoners.
you cannot play for the 4K anymore, so you play for the best result, and this result is still very
Absolutely.
good.
So let's
We
see
are
how
setting up
Rocket
the
handles.
lobby right now.
Yeah.
Pedro quickly toilet. Okay. So
Yeah.
just give us a
All right.
second here, please.
Yeah. Everyone when Pedro comes back, we will all give him a round of applause for successful toilet.
So a funny little inside joke in my community. Someone wanted to type that they had to go pee in chat, but it turned into the 7TV emote people audience, and it's been a bit of a meme ever since. That makes me very happy whenever I see it.
Excellent.
The players are ready, and we're loading into potentially our final trial of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how Rocket rises to the opportunity presented to him.
Yeah, I've never seen him play Dracula, and I do think that Rocket is mainly known for his prowess on M1 killers, on 1v1 killers. I think even Unknown might fall into that category because he's fairly popular in 1v1s, or at
I
least
could see that.
he's not super unusual. While I do think that Dark Lord is rarer than Unknown. And again, with Obi being very experienced on the pick, and this having been Team Gorilla's pick, I'm very curious if Rocket can show that he's one of the great killer players. We see the exact same build coming through, but I think there's a different add-on in play, and I do not know what it does. I know the Lapis Lazuli.
Yeah. I was gonna say the biggest build deviation we're seeing here is Lapis Lazuli being in the other add-on slot.
That is honestly the only add-on that you need. He does see a
Yeah.
Sand Orb near the edge map there, just going for a cheeky locker gamble, because if it pays off, the reward is grand. But that does give the
Absolutely.
survivors some time to stealth to get into their position, as someone is leaving scratch marks here, potentially baiting a bit of a chase.
This is found Anna. Oh,
Nice.
getting a mouthful of the air directly behind her does force him to use the pounce to get the first health state. I mean, a little bit of a delay before he tried to use it again. Survivor does actually get some distance out of that. Now we're going to see a vampire form coming out of the littlest fella that could.
Oh, Anna winning the 50 there, but unfortunately goes down to a very precise Hellfire by a rocket.
Absolutely.
Choosing a good death spot, just sending it as far edge map as possible into the corrupted generators.
Very quick.
Fast down. Yeah. So yeah, we see that the survivors are still not close to completing their first generators. They have all been caught a tiny bit off guard by this first chase ending rather quickly. But yeah, Rocket just has to show us now that he can capitalize for this great start as the celebratory firecracker comes out without much success. Rocket just bagging a couple of pallets. And this is a position where I could see him camp this to second stage at least.
And just a one-man cleanup crew. The other add-on, by the way, I've just been notified. It instantly recharges teleport after breaking a pallet.
Oh, that's an interesting tech.
Yeah, it's very much it is explained by Rocket. It's so aggressive breaking these pallets because it lets him just zoom around as much as he wishes to, which makes a lot of sense. Like this early in the game, just getting a measure of what the survivors are doing. As our dear Pedrito discovered, interesting go for the pull.
So it's not gonna be it's not gonna be FTP, and stage 2 has been achieved by Rocket. This is a brilliant early game for Rocket.
Absolutely. Rocket kind of leaving the survivors reeling a little bit here, seemingly unsure as to what the next move is going to be. Still no first gen completed. I had a wonderful sense of when the survivors when Spitz was going to rotate around for that pull.
Spitz is on the edge map and he has nothing here. He cannot pull. He just have to he has to take an injury and leave. This is falling apart for Team Gorilla. Are we going to go to the freaking Lich tiebreaker for a second time?
We're getting a full series out of this and we get to see some Lich gameplay. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Unless the survivors pull off some absolute wizardry right now, that's where this is going to go.
gets found as well.
Because Rocket is running this like a navy.
This is exactly what Obi has been doing to Team Imperium in the first match of the day. Rocket just finds every single person who is trying to rotate for the underground to Anna, and she just dies on the first hook. That never feels good. And the survivors are left in the 3v1 with 3 generators remaining. Rocket is in control of this game.
The obsession, especially the obsession still being alive for Wretched Fate, and I say that as they disappear from the match. Pedro has got another gen high completion, but this is an injured survivor being chased. Pain Resonance is likely in Pedro's future here.
This is a 4K for sure.
Without a doubt.
There is no way that Gorilla can come back from this. I don't want to jinx anybody here, but yeah, look at the gens. You have a good gen setup, right? No, honestly, they're pretty spread out. So it's no 3 gen. I thought one of the hook auras was a gen there on the top, on the bot side, on the shack side. And there's no gen pressure on the map. Spitz is being slowed down by, well, not by Wretched Fate. You mentioned that.
That's already gone, yeah.
That is gone. But yeah, it's just Spitz is injured and he has to rotate for pull, and he gets found in the rotation. So he just left his gen for nothing, right? No progress.
And he catches Pedro trying to sneak for the other way. Zone into the corner by the Hellfire.
Wait, live play.
Hello. Pedro makes a palace at least. He's still going to go down to the wolf form, but the valiant attempt was made. Oh, wow. Okay.
Speaking of bad death spots, this is certainly one of them.
About as bad as you can get, and looks like that's going to be. That was all she wrote. That's a 4K at 2 gens remaining for Rocket, taking us to a full best of 5 series. We're going to be moving to that Lich set after all. Dios mio.
The Lich set on Forgotten Ruins that we've all been waiting for. The
Let's
set
go!
that everybody wanted to see. Damn, this is super interesting.
Absolutely. You see, I did find it quite interesting that both Obi and Rocket had that very fast first chase, but the dominant Rocket got to really appreciate the domino effect of having such a quick first chase and being able to follow it up with some really solid pressure, some good like interrupting unhooks and kind of juggling the team, and they tried to ensure the first pull, whereas Obi never got that momentum on the board. He was always, even after a fairly quick first chase, playing from behind.
Yeah, and the really important thing is that you find the unhook. If
Yeah.
that happens to you, you probably take an injury. You need to tell your team, hey, I cannot get the unhook, someone else need to rotate. And that person has to rotate from a position that is less ideal than the place that you were rotating from. So it's an even riskier play to make up for a planned play that failed. So you have to throw your plans out the window.
Absolutely.
And that is really what ended up winning Rocket the game.
No, it was every single thing that could have gone wrong for those survivors did. Every single thing.
Yeah, for sure. And that is very similar to what happened, like I said, in the first set of the day between Gorilla and Imperium, where Obi was able to get that rare 4K5. And it seems like we have a bit of a roster shakeup. We get the rare Obi Survivor, which is always a treat.
We are
to
not
watch.
worthy.
But yeah,
Okay.
Forgotten Ruins, Lich, probably a set that people are not super familiar with. We gave it a
Indeed.
quick breakdown last week. What do we have to expect here?
Well, we're almost like two small maps. So I've always thought of Forgotten Ruins. There is the upstairs, which is fairly open, and there is the downstairs, which is a bloody fortress half the time. Some killers are really, really adept at defending the downstairs. Like, for example, if a Bubba or a Houndmaster gets a down in the indoors half of Forgotten Ruins, whoever's on that hook is unlikely to be coming out again. But with Lich, that's a bit of a different question. This map has, I'd say, more interesting stairs and elevation than you might necessarily think. So we might see some really interesting flights of the damned getting used. No, this is a map I have a lot of love for. Even though there's an asterisk of unless I'm playing Twins or Knight, then I hate this map with a burning passion.
Yes. Okay, so the strong loops on this map are all on the bottom side on the upper floor. I know that's very confusing, but it's the side where Shack is located, far away from the main building. You basically want to keep the first chase on that side of the map, use all your resources while your team works both downstairs gen and that one generator that spawns behind main building. And if you manage to pop 2 of those gens while depleting those resources on the bot side, you're in for a good time on the survivor side. But this is a very volatile map. The RNG is very, very unique. It's almost not recommended at all to take chases downstairs ever, because there's like one usable pallet that can spawn. The rest of them are all super unsafe. So it really depends if our survivor team can have a good first chase, or if our killer can have a fast first down. We see Ruin in play. I just expect people to not be very familiar with totem spawns on this map, as Rocket does not find anybody with his first orb of Dispelling, or Dispelling Sphere. He does find Dan, though, in the dungeon, taking first chase. Nice use of balanced landing. Good check spot, but losing a bit of distance by running into a wall. And Rocket has decided, I don't want to play the funny portal game. I'm leaving this chase. I'm going to find somebody else.
It immediately discovers that three
Oh my
survivors
God.
on Shaq's side. Throwing the dispelling spear there ahead of time very much feels like, you know, when you pick up a rock and a bunch of insects all come
Yeah.
falling out at the same time and they scatter.
They all
Yeah,
scatter. One of them drops Shack pallet. The other one gets out of the window barely.
Oh,
Rocket.
Spitz beautifully evading those skeletons, but takes even Spitz is like, really? You can
Yeah.
see for a second, like, hang on a minute.
He did not
That
expect
unhooked
that.
it. That hit didn't feel quite reasonable. Second time dropping Shack Pallet, actually just taking the break this time. Firecracker doesn't quite get anything done, and that's going to be... Yeah, there we... Oh, hang on a minute. There's that post-hit cooldown
Resilience.
just slightly catching... Oh,
Oh, beautiful
nicely
head-on.
done with the head-on play.
That was so necessary. But yeah, this is what happens
Absolutely.
when you pair Spitz's 12 ping with resilience. You become untouchable on Shack.
Yeah.
But are you as strong
Oh.
on the snake tile?
Our hero Pedro coming in with the pallet save to end all... Sorry, the head-on to end all head-ons.
I'm very curious because this is the second time that Rocket is just swinging into nothing. As Obi trying to repair a gen that is in the middle of the chase. That's a bit ambitious there.
It's just a little bit.
Dan working one of the downstairs gen. Pedro dodging the skeletons. Beautiful. Mage hand still on cooldown. But yeah, I'm wondering if that's just some fumble. Oh my god. So you can actually see the shadow of the survivor from under the tile there. That's what sold Pedro and made him easy pickings for Rocket. First, pain res onto Rocket, onto Pedro
Notably,
with this first.
Does
down.
not lose a pain res token.
So no progress at all on the map.
Yep, and Rocket knows it.
Yeah. To be honest, it's really impressive that, and really important as well for the survivors, that Obi was able to pop that mid-map gen after they've invested so much on it and the chase was so close to it this entire time.
Yeah.
Had that pain res come through and interrupt that gen, it would have been very, very bad for Gorilla.
Well, not just the pain res, but Ruin's still active. So that gen would have been... that gen would have been hit with the pain res and then just kept... Even if they can't just go and, you know, give it a little bit of... They can't just keep squirreling away at it. Ruin will destroy their progress if they didn't get it done quickly. So powering through those two gens seems just about right. Oh, Rocket ending up on the wrong side of that window seems to re-engage with our wonderful friend Pedro.
Yeah, I'm
He doesn't
curious.
have lots of work with here. Oh,
I'm curious how mechanically sound Rocket is on those span cells. As just another good M1 chase coming through. Pedro goes down again, and we're already seeing how fast these resources become really hard to use for the survivors. Yeah, there are two pallets, but how do you reach them with this many spells available in the 1v1?
and with Mage Hand being able to just comfortably invalidate one of them.
Now we see Obi posturing for the unhook with further people in his inventory. And if Rocket is able to... Oh, he knows he's searching in the right spot, but he barely misses our Jake. And this is going to be the FTP coming through onto Pedro, making the tunnel out that much harder.
Yeah, looks like Rocket has found the next chase target, but doesn't seem to want to commit to it. Would rather just go back to that hook. Notes that Obi has been injured with 4 people, so he's angling for this second fresh hook and potentially a second pain res into the jet progress.
Yeah, this
Can't
seems to
let
be
that happen.
the death spot that the team has chosen for the survivors. Every chase is just going here, and again, you don't get the pallet vacuum, so you might as well not try to go for it. But Pedro being in that position in the first place, trying to go for that pallet save, shows that Team Gorilla is getting a tiny bit desperate, because they probably know that Pedro knows. So yeah, it's already a high risk to take, with the killer being aware of the pallet save situation.
There goes a critical dispelling sphere on the gen in the dungeons.
Yeah, you barely ever can contest those.
For sure.
It's really the upstairs gens that the survivors somehow need to get done.
Oh, there goes another gen. So it's just one gen to go, but those gens decent right there in rather awkward positions. So
This is Pedro in chase again. Deathhook survivor holding great distance, getting the stun.
the
Mage
cheeky
hand
stun.
not good enough. Still has the skeletons available, but no elevation to use for Rocket. And yeah, Pedro easily crouches that one, very telegraphed. Dropped
Making
pallet to
Rocket-
play, winning 50s here.
Yeah, making Rocket really work for this first health state. He just goes, nah, I'm not interested. I'd rather give police my gens.
Oh my, this is so much progress. They've been tripling this.
Ruin active is going to destroy this gen progress.
And Obi gets hooked right on top
What
of
an
it too.
enormous tempo swing there.
Yeah, this was so many resources invested. 3 survivors working on that generator.
Yeah.
In hopes that Rocket would be overcommitting to Pedro, who's on death hook. But Rocket just knows better and goes for Obi, who takes a pretty unfortunate down at the edge of the map. And Spitz has just been playing portals this entire match.
I think what would be a huge game changer here for the survivors would be if this ruin was found and destroyed.
It's honestly too late for that, I think, because
That's fair.
you either have to get rid of the ruin before you make it to the 3v1, but you have 2 Deathhook survivors, and like at this point you just have to pray that you get this gen done while ruin is still up before it gets too much value, right? At this point it's kind of too late, quote unquote, to get the ruin, because you feel like this game is already slipping away from you. So even if you get it, you just invest too much time into finding and cleansing it. Beautiful play by Dan.
Countering both of Rocket's aggressive spells there.
Oh! NPC tagged by Rocket, using the flight and immediately returning to the gen. Pedrito pre-dropping as if his life depends on it. That's because his life does depend on it.
The story of Spitz's entire game so far.
He's having the time of his life right now.
Do gen, run portal. That gen looks, again, very, very high progress. Rocket is having to hug this gen like it's his firstborn child.
Oh, they all win the 50s on this window. Like they've not made a mistake on the flight through the window so far. They've all been very patient. They've all been reading the situation perfectly. And again, this is where Rocket, not being super confident on the animation cancels.
And they squeeze it through.
Yeah, adrenaline onto dance. So even this fresh hook survivor becomes so much less attractive now that they're healthy.
Absolutely, and the speed boost gets into the pallet that's already dropped, and Rocket's taxes are due, and his house is burned down, and his dog's dead. You know, this is exactly what you don't want to happen. There goes Obi. So that will be a kill, but it's on a survivor who's already on death hook, so it's not as much value as a confirmed hook on Dan might have been.
Wow, this again was on a knife's edge, but
It was, yeah.
I think this is what we were talking about earlier, right? This game has been kind of slipping away from Rocket for a while, and he kind of wasn't able to capitalize on it. Just not clean on the animation cancels, making the skeletons too easy to react to from the survivors.
Absolutely. And I will say, for a shack without a pallet in it, it felt very safe for those survivors. Again, as you said, every window 50, every awkward death spot, making it difficult to patrol the extra gens. It was the survivors were able to get a lot out of a little every single time. Didn't have a huge amount to work with. They couldn't make it to you'll note that those 2 pallets near shack, the ones that are kind of the only pallets in that area, they ended the match still undropped.
Yeah,
Who needs pallets when you have aura? Am I right? Pallets are for chumps. We just don't care.
You just know that these top survivors are always able to make so much out of a single pallet, right? And every 50 that you lose is so costly. But yeah, this has been 5 stages, too fresh. And I think Obi is going to be quite happy with this one.
I think
5
he's going to be very
stages, too
confident going
fresh.
into this.
Yeah, this is a pretty killer-sided map. And again, Obi does not play killer for Team he does play killer for Team Elysium, but not the Lich.
Not the Henry. This actually is Vecna. This isn't knockoff Vecna. This is real.
Yes, this is good
Yes.
Vecna. This is
I'm
fun
so
Vecna.
used to hearing Vecna and go, oh yeah, Henry. That I actually think no, this is actually Vecna.
Yeah, I stopped calling Vecna Vecna just so I don't taint his name if somebody thinks that I'm talking about the first, you know? It's
Yeah.
very sad out there. We were actually close to seeing the first matchup on Tenax today. Unfortunately, it was on the other semifinals, and we were not able to broadcast that due to some
That's
team
unfortunate.
issues. But yeah, it would have been very fun to watch because, funnily enough, Rocket has the world record on wins in a row with the first at like
Wonderful.
237, which is super impressive.
That is very, very impressive.
And again, not sure how that one made it through the pick and ban phase. But yeah, it does
one of
seem
these days
like
we'll see some first on camera.
I know Zach really wants to.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what kind of role he's going to serve in the wider competitive sphere, because he seems so volatile, and given how exhaustion perks seem to be so backbreaking against him, how a lot of the nurse counterplay and people experienced against nurse might kind of see him the same way. He's just a very different killer. And I'd be interested to see how the high level survivors adapt to that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll see that someday, but not today.
Yeah, I find him so hard to play against because he can do so well for such a long time, and then you just mess up twice and you're dead, you know?
Yeah.
Or your teammate gives him the power and then you're dead because your teammate didn't dodge. And other times your teammate will do the most amazing job of all time, and then you just mess up, and all of a sudden you are to blame because of your team being in trouble. And I really don't think that the first needs the passive slowdown and the built-in Mori. I think he just has a tiny bit too much in his kit. I think he's pretty strong even without that. And I think especially in solo queue, he's such a bane for the survivors.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't have a huge amount of experience with him either way, because I've not been playing a huge amount of Dead by Daylight recently.
Very fair.
Yeah. Turns out when they drop a new when they basically relaunch Overwatch, that's a good way to get me to stop playing DVD for a while, especially when 2v8 queue times occur. So I don't really have a huge amount of experience with the first, and the experience that I do have is on 120 plus ping because my friends are all Americans.
Yum.
So, ow. it's not pleasant. But if I when it comes to the Henry, I'm like, whatever you guys have to say, I will take your word for it, because I do. This is a killer that basically just passed me by.
No worries. That is okay. I've got all my solo queue grudges stored up inside me
Oh yes.
until that dreadful day finally comes that I get to commentate the killer. But yeah, we're just setting up the lobby again. Some
Absolutely.
last minute perk and build adjustments.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
should be ready to load in very soon.
I think I know why Rocket seems to struggle a little bit on that lich round, and I think the trick is, as we saw before, Obi's Jake fit. I've noticed the less chopped your team's Jake fit is, the better you seem to do. There is a Jake in there. There is a Jake in this match. The fit is pretty good. So if I was Obi, I would be a little bit scared, you know, just because of the ominous power of a well dressed Jake.
I'm disappointed that we didn't see the Spitz Jake because he uses the trucker cap in combination with the Hellfire Club shirt, and it looks real nice. I like it a lot.
So we're finally loading in into our very last match of the night.
Yeah, this decides all of it. And
it's for all the bananas.
Prestige 16 on the Lich. Survivors spawning inside the dungeon. Obi upstairs, no ruin. Ruin always very helpful if you need a high gen result, but if you only need 6 stages, I think this build is very, very safe, and Obi is going to feel happy with this.
Hard agree. Doesn't have the feast or famine of hex token spawns. Takes a shack pallet basically for free. Obi's like Obi perfectly happy just having that pallet there with all his spells still available. Only 1 pallet spawns here rather than the traditional 2 that we saw last time.
Very good pathing from Mash though, using the distance very well.
Ooh.
Oh, what a nasty hit. I know Obi's ping has been famous in the past. He's gotten a better internet since. But some focus is always very appreciated. Clean fast vote, but Mash still gets down. Oh,
absolutely a brutally quick first down onto Mash there. We have a Scourge Hook right here. So we're going to see a Pain Res coming out. The servers are splitting up on gens at least, so this isn't going to be knocking back a huge number of overall team progress, but still probably a faster down than I should imagine the team was really looking for.
Yeah, with this tight of a win condition, you really want the first chase to pop up. Of course, you cannot guarantee that ever, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad first chase, and the survivors are splitting pressure quite well. Unfortunately, all of their gens get interrupted, even though the death spot was not on any active gen. So just really good awareness by Obi of the whereabouts of the survivors.
Really well. Nice catch up. It looks like Tavo is still going to be able to make the portal, but I'm not sure how much else they can make though.
Yeah, balanced landing is huge here.
That is absolutely massive.
Valuable time, but now elevation.
There are stairs.
Yeah.
Death by stairs. Yeah, there we go. That's what we're talking about downstairs, even though it is not somewhere that Chase you want to see every day.
Did you see how close Rocket's gen was? That was
it was
really
a
nice
kissing
line.
Distance.
Is it this one as well that he was working? Yes.
It was this one. Yeah, it was this one.
Oh, what a huge throwback for the survivors.
What a collapse.
Setback.
That's
throwback.
brutal.
Yeah. To be fair, the only good pallet downstairs spawned, but Rocket, he tries. But this pallet is not here now, so the injury comes through. Tavo is hooked in the dungeon. And honestly, I wouldn't hate if Obi just secured this for it. Just let the generator regress. You still have a 3-gen setup inside the dungeon, don't you?
Yes, indeed.
And a hooked survivor as well. So really, all of the pressure that Obi could ever ask for is down here in the dungeon.
Yeah. Obi seemingly getting a drink. Just taking a second.
Does he expect Rocket to still hover here? Wait, what? Oh my god. I have no clue what that was.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. But we're gonna see.
That was not what Obi wanted.
Oh, there goes Rocket tasting floor.
So Obi was tasting his drink, but Rocket does taste the floor, and that doesn't make the situation for the survivors any better.
No, it doesn't. We're gonna see another Pain Res coming out. Yeah.
I would love to know what was going on there, because usually the killer standing still screams spectator bug, but I assume you were spectating in game and you were aware that Obi was just AFK for a second.
Just having a snack, I don't know. But now we're back here, back at this exact position. I didn't know actually that because Obi does have the blue atom, I believe inflicts exhaustion with the Dispelling Sphere, that he was trying to cancel Tavo's balanced landing before he could use it.
Okay, I know what he's doing. He's not AFK. This is just the check spot, because the survivors can only enter from those 2 sides. So he just wasn't expecting.
Lying in wait.
Yeah, he wasn't expecting that Rocket was still downstairs. So now he's just check spotting, guys. This is what peak killer performance looks like.
Now this is NA check spots. This is NA check spots.
But yeah, he just knows that it's a simple equation. He can camp this, and the survivors cannot complete enough gens in the meantime. So securing Rocket to stage 2 means he only needs 1 more hook stage afterwards, and he would just win off of fresh hook stages. So yeah, just very good gameplay.
Slightly anticlimactic end to this series, but you know, If it works, it works.
I just want to see the hoops that these survivors are gonna jump through to make this unhook happen somehow.
Yeah, because
Because
they have to. They have
they
no
will
choice.
have to pull a rabbit out of their hats.
They will.
Okay,
Ironic, given they're
Six-Foot
playing
coming
against
in
a
clutch
wizard.
now. Look at that. Oh, that's early.
I do think it's quite funny there watching Lexi do the wretched fate as if they're gonna get Rocket off this hook.
Wait, Mash takes a tag.
Yeah.
Oh, this is all. Wait, at least they have one person down there now. That's
yeah.
not the window. Lexi
it.
also takes a tag.
Oh,
Stavo?
falling through.
Oh man,
This is not what you want to see.
this looks so goofy, of course, but they like
It
have to
does.
get the unhook
They
onto
get-
Rocket
they
without
get the
getting it down
pull.
for it.
But
We
then
need a
they do
cracker
get the
or
Mash does
flashlight
get down.
save here
Yeah.
now. Yeah, that's Obi knows. Obi expects Rocket to be here. No balance landing on him, and
Counting to 15.
this is not a strong palette to play. How many 50s
No, it
can we
really
win?
isn't.
One.
One.
150.
What? Uno 50.
Okay, so
It's gonna be a dead Rocket. Wow. Okay.
Rocket gets blinded, salt in the wounds, as Obi secures the win condition for his team in the most heroic fashion.
Yeah. Standing in the corner.
Oh my god, that is pretty funny.
It is quite funny. Well, what a game. What a game. And what a match. This is...
They're all still here. The 3-gen is on the bot side. This is... Wait, he's wrong at that. That actually gives Tavo a bit of distance.
It does.
Oh,
Well,
this map.
in terms of success, this like Obi has the win condition, but we're still gonna see how the rest of this match plays out. We're still gonna watch them struggle and get some gameplay in. Oh,
Just imagine that 99.9% completed generator actually finishes instead of
that
getting
would have
painless.
that would have completely changed Obi's plan. He given how forgiving the win condition was, there's a good chance he could still have made it work.
For sure.
But getting that 99 gen pain res and then no ability to progress it at any point the rest of the match because Hook an inch away from it. Oh, yeah. You're not ready to come back from that.
I said on our last broadcast that you never want to die downstairs, and I think this is a pretty good example as to why. It is so easy to shut down any way for the survivors to get into the dungeon part of this map. And it's gonna be so costly to try to make anything happen here. So finds the heartbeat onto Lexi, the killer instinct. But yeah, how are you gonna complete these gens?
It's like it says in the D&D source books. If you head into the Lich's tower, you ain't coming out again.
Oh, he's nodding. He's nodding. Oh man. Is he gonna try and go
It's
for a
gonna be
snipe?
silly.
Dodge them. I dare you enter my lair. Does dodge them. Yannick does not come through quite just yet. Just quite yet. And yeah. Again, probably a bit anticlimactic if you were hoping for hype chases, but if you want a giggle, if you want content, this is pretty big. I would rank this high up there.
Yeah, Obi kind of playing with his food a little bit. Just this is just a very rapid conclusion to these things. I opened the locker.
Made him open the locker.
Mash is playing for the real win condition the entire time.
Achieved.
The locker win con. Let's go.
Now
Put on the torture room hook to give the beholder in there some company.
Now it's just Lexi standing. Win condition achieved.
Yeah.
Resilience equipped. We're in the best tuxedo. What can we do on this palette?
Mage handing a pallet.
Oh. Skeleton's going white. Nice. Losing the 50.
And we get to see the Mori in the torture chamber, just as Gary Gijax intended.
Absolutely flawless.
Absolutely, and that's going to be the 4K and the success for Team Gorilla. Wow.
Yeah, really, really fun. Congratulations to Team
Absolutely.
Gorilla. This is now the second time that they are 10x champions, taking home the prize of $100. And yeah, it's always super fun to watch. Team Rocket, they have won previously, and I'm sure we're gonna see them again in the future. They have proven to be
sure.
a really, really strong team, considering they are
Yeah.
more of a pug team. And they definitely came prepared. They brought a fight,
Sure they
and
did.
they put up some really great results on many killers.
Absolutely. And the fact that they took this to a full series at all, despite some frankly terrifying performances from Obi on Blight and Trickster, like they had everything it takes to to make them work for it, you know? And if it hadn't been for a slightly rough lich set, they could have taken they could this was by no means a done thing, you
Yeah.
know? We're definitely able to give Team Gorilla a bloody nose.
This is going to be it from us today. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Stampy. Thank you, Pixel, for casting with me today. Thank you
And
to Zach. Thank you to the producer, Alma. Thank you to everybody working on the background, making this possible. And of
praise be
course,
Alma mighty is he.
of course, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Correct Media. Couldn't do this without them, and we're very grateful for them. So please go check out the Loading Screen, which is an esports news channel on YouTube run by Cracked. Every other Tuesday it uploads. Type !TLS in the chat for some info. Check out XP Share, which is a gaming podcast live on Sundays on all audio platforms and YouTube, !XP Share. And the tournament VOD will also be published on the Cracked Media YouTube. So be sure to subscribe, !YouTube. Again, if you liked the broadcast, you can also follow us or subscribe to the Cracked Media official Twitch channel. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your night.
Good night to you all.